Buffy the Vampire Slayer was basically a rite of passage for angsty millennials in the 90s and 2000s. Rumblings about a reboot or revival were ongoing for pretty much every other year following the final season, either with the original cast and/or newcomers. There was expanded media and comics that followed on from the end of the show if you wanted it, but given its core function was getting its characters from teenagehood to adulthood via monsters used as allegories for various life experiences, the 7 seasons of Buffy broadcast between 1997 and 2003 fulfilled the show's function perfectly well, and still fulfilled that function for newer audiences who bought the box sets for a good long while. I was happy to see it end where it did, and while I returned to it occasionally for nostalgic reasons, prior to this video I hadn't done so for a long time, at least not a complete rewatch. It was part of my past that stayed where it was. Shows like Buffy aren't meant to last forever. Although apparently we got incredibly close to actually getting that long proposed revival or reboot recently. And given we live in an age where no franchise is allowed to stay dead so long as it's got a fan base, and this has been a lingering prospect for such a long time, it is highly likely that someone's going to try this again eventually. So what I've decided to do is dispense with Buffy's legacy as a cultural artifact and undertake a thorough analysis of what the show was trying to do with its characters and why it did what it did with them as a show that was on between 1997 and 2003. And I think it's important to highlight the time period it was made in because something has started to become pretty obvious to newer generations who've discovered Buffy on streaming services in the 2020s, and found a massive disconnect between what the show was at the time and popular shows from the present day listed alongside it on said streaming services. And that issue is, of course, the age factor. Buffy is one of the first popular shows from my generation to have reached a state where it's now considered a classic that we're going to need to acknowledge to anyone watching it for the first time that... Yeah, you've just got to trust me, this really worked back in the day. Because I've tried showing people who either weren't there or were but weren't paying attention some of what are now considered to be the show's finest hours, and they've just been going, really? This worked for you? You might have seen the A24 horror film I Saw the TV Glow the other year, which is about a character reminiscing about a show from their childhood that's quite obviously a Buffy stand-in. And the sequences where they show what it looked like when they watched it as a kid and what it looks like when they discover it again as an adult on a streaming service are violently disconnected from each other. When they were a kid, the show was dark, mysterious, brooding and violent. As an adult, it's stupid, cheesy and lame. I Saw the TV Glow deals with a lot of heavy themes, but for a millennial who grew up on Buffy and who watched the entire thing about 30 or 40 times but hadn't seen it in a while and was sure it was just as good as I remembered it being, insinuating that Buffy might not be as good as you remember is one of the most utterly terrifying things that film does. Realising how badly even some of the good bits have aged did happen a fair bit throughout the rewatch I did for this video. Like this scene in the season 1 finale where Buffy's just been brought back to life and she, Xander and Angel are marching across the school to fight the Master and they play the theme tune. I remember this scene looking so cool when I saw it as a kid. Nowadays I watch this and I go, she walked towards the school and she kicked a guy. Wow.
Oh look, a bad guy.
I swear this scene didn't used to look like this, you've got to believe me. Come on, Graduation Day Part 2. Come on, hold up. Hold.
Well, gosh.
You can never go home again, can you? So whenever I praise certain bits of writing that's aged badly, or costumes or special effects that make it look ridiculous, I will have to contextualize it with, it was a very long time ago. No, shows don't look or play like Buffy anymore, and there are a fair few episodes that you probably wouldn't make at all these days. But that is true of most shows from prior decades, and Gen Xers and Boomers have had to grapple with this issue themselves before when showing shows from their childhoods to newer audiences. This is just one of the first times that millennials are going to have to do it. I mean, I'm having to reckon with the fact the final season is now over 20 years old, and I'm now closer in age to Giles than I am to Buffy.
I'm not supposed to have a private life?
No, because you're very, very old and it's gross.
Oh god, it hurts. So yes, I will have to acknowledge that if you weren't there, you are probably going to be staring at some of this video with a blank face, trying to wrap your brain around the fact that I like some of this stuff. I'm even going to be praising some episodes widely acknowledged by the fanbase as bad even back then. But first, we should inevitably start with a little incident a few years prior to the show that people seem to forget. And that's that Buffy is in actual fact a TV spin-off of a movie, and was so wildly successful and influential that it basically erased the source material from existence. The weirdest thing about the original Buffy movie from 1992 is that I don't seem to be the only person who loved the show but never watched the movie. I knew of its existence, but for some reason I was just never interested in it, because I knew that Buffy was played by somebody else and my favourite characters weren't in it. So even if it shared the same name, it didn't appear to have a whole lot to do with the show, as much as the show essentially treats itself as a sequel to the movie. I was also probably encouraged to steer clear of it owing to its reputation among the fandom, which was probably encouraged by Joss Whedon himself, who spent quite a lot of time trying desperately hard to distance himself from it. And it's not hard to see why, because it's quite embarrassing to this feminist mythos he built up around himself when Buffy took off. Whedon claims the idea for Buffy came from watching horror movies in which, quote, "bowl-head blondes wandered into dark alleys and got murdered by some creature. I would love to see a movie in which a blonde wanders into a dark alley, takes care of herself, and deploys her powers." Now, please believe me when I say that this is not exclusively hindsight based on reporting around Whedon in recent years. For the record, all the cast and crew who've spoken out against him have my sympathies. But when he claims that this is where the idea for Buffy came from, I find it incredibly hard to believe him, because that origin for the idea only makes sense if you haven't seen the film. Yes, Whedon has spent years claiming extensive studio interference happened. He was encouraged to make it more of a comedy, and a lot of the darker elements got dropped. I see why people might believe this based on how the series plays, but I personally think this feminist empowerment of the blonde girl pursued by a monster was a retrofitted origin for it when Buffy took off. Because I genuinely do not see any draft of this film existing in which that was its basis. If I was trying to sell this movie to a distributor in the early 90s, the pitch for it is, wouldn't it be funny if this great mystical warrior with the power to kick the butts of bad guys and save people just so happened to be an annoying, vacuous teenage girl?
Alright, what do we do now?
We wait for Robert Berman to wake up.
Do you have any gum?
LOL Contrast is what this film is based on. It's a parody. Conan the Barbarian becomes Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Regardless of how much studio interference caused the movie to take a more comedic tone and we ended up with things like Buffy gets a sort of PMS that acts like vampire radar. Yes, that is a genuine actual thing that is in this movie.
But I'm not due for another couple of weeks since you're so hot on the subject.
It was a natural reaction on the part of the Slayers, and you're going to be able to use that to track them.
Great. My secret weapon is PMS.
However much was changed or added later, or Whedon was influenced by people, the entire structure of it would have to be completely different if it was a female empowerment story. So at the start, Buffy is a stereotypical airhead valley girl. I had Frank Zappa's Valley Girl playing in my head for the entirety of Act 1.
I'm like all these like really great shoe stores. I like love going into like clothing stores and stuff. I like buy the neatest mini skirts and stuff.
Oh wow, look at that jacket.
Oh, this is so lush.
Basically, she's an interchangeable teenage girl like any other who gets picked out as special by a mysterious man played by the king of ominous characters, Donald Sutherland, who appears one day and proclaims that she is the chosen one and she must fight vampires, which she doesn't want to do because she's got other priorities.
All I want to do is graduate from high school, go to Europe, marry Christian Slater, and die.
Over the course of the film, as she trains, learns about her history, her powers, she starts to think that all her old friends are shallow and vacuous, when there are more important things in life, like fighting vampires.
You know what it's like when everything is suddenly different? Everything you thought was crucial seems so stupid.
Stuff happens to help her along the way towards this realization, but the problem is that Buffy doesn't really take much of a role in that stuff. I found movie Buffy to be a really quite passive character. She doesn't really forge her own path in life. She learns to submit to what life has chosen for her. She doesn't really fight against it like show Buffy does. None of this is helped by the fact that Kirsty Swanson's style of delivery is the complete opposite to the Buffy that we know these days. Sarcastic quips that you can imagine Sarah Michelle Gellar delivering with her arms folded, strong and assertive, come out as this breathy teenage girl whining.
You want me to go to the graveyard with you because I'm the chosen one and there are vampires? Does Elvis talk to you?
You must come with me. Your destiny awaits.
I don't have a destiny. I'm destiny-free, really.
It's not Kirsty Swanson's fault, mind you, and I'm not blaming the casting department either. Kirsty Swanson just makes sense in this role based on the material that she's been given. I'm just not seeing how this film started out as empowering the victim of the monster and it ended up like this. Granted, yes, the series is more in line with that vision, so it's certainly possible that the movie was drastically changed to give it an entirely different point to the one that Whedon says spearheaded the entire enterprise. I just have a really hard time buying it based on what I watched. Most of Whedon's complaints that he's talked about publicly in the years since seem to be aimed at Donald Sutherland changing lines and the director letting him get away with it. Apparently she was supposed to burn down the gym, maybe her parents' divorce was an actual presence in an earlier draft, but none of these things would fix the issue I'm referring to here. Buffy's just being influenced by things, she's not making her own decisions. This passivity is deeply embedded foundational stuff. The show has got a completely different view on Buffy's chosen one destiny, and it involves quite a lot of Buffy rejecting it and wishing that she were just the teenage girl who goes to school, has friends, boyfriends, studies, shops. She wistfully wishes that she was the popular cheerleader that she used to be, but she can't be anymore. It's a tragedy that she can't be a normal girl.
I would love to be upstairs watching TV or gossiping about boys or, God, even studying.
The movie decides that the things a normal girl wants are shallow, and that she shouldn't want those things anyway because the values of a shallow, vacuous valley girl are dumb. Which feels a lot less coming of age and learning to handle responsibility, and more a judgment on the values that a stereotypical teenage girl has that prioritises boys and shoes over responsibilities. Speaking of boys, the love interest subplot is really quite baffling. She just sort of gets paired up with this awkward outsider loser guy called Pike, who's kind of like a proto-Xander. She had a bad interaction with him and his friend earlier in the film. Then after his friend gets turned into a vampire, she saves him from a vampire attack and hides him at her home. And suddenly, they've got chemistry.
You find yourself babbling incoherently to a stranger man in your living room.
Are you calling me a man?
Yeah, this comes out of fucking nowhere. It's like a switch got flicked and suddenly it expects you to believe that sparks are flying. I just sat up at that point and scratched my head and went, wait, he's a love interest? Really? Why? Oh, but you know, she saved him from the vampires. So you know, she's strong. The roles have been reversed, and that's like empowerment, yeah? And she beats the vampires at the end and rides off with Pike on his motorcycle. The entire thing reads like the wistful fantasy of a teenage nerd looking longingly across at the vacuous cheerleader in his class and wishing that she could see that her worldview is vacuous and shallow and that she'd change her ways and then she would be with me. To be clear, I'm not saying this is definitely where the idea came from, but that is how it comes across. I actually found a draft of the script on the internet dated 1990. I'm not totally certain of its authenticity, of course. While there are a fair few differences to the finished product, and I could see how some scenes might have had a different intended tone to the one it ended up with, which would suggest that Whedon's probably correct that the director was a problem, but as I expected, Buffy's passive role is still a big problem with it, and it was always going to be a big problem with the movie, no matter who made it. And yeah, the PMS line, it's in this draft. Before we go any further, I'm not going to be bringing Whedon up much in the rest of the video, and not because of all that's come out about the way he ran Buffy. I would have done this anyway because lots of writing about Buffy tends to treat Whedon as this super important visionary with this perfect plan for the show, when I personally think the movie underscores an important point about collaboration and perspective within the entertainment industry. People don't tend to appreciate how American TV shows in particular are made, and that the writing credit is often pretty ambiguous. Americans write TV shows much more collaboratively. It's not a case where one person who got the credit this week sat down with a word processor and came out with the wish or earshot after a session or two. The writing credit's usually given to whoever did the most legwork on an episode. If Whedon's saying the film had a lot of interference and veered far away from his original vision, then I'm going to suggest that having a writer's room filled with female writers like Marty Noxon and Jana Spenson probably had a lot to do with creating the more empowering version of Buffy that we know these days out of the ashes of this movie. None of this is to undersell Whedon's achievements, as much as everyone might want to do that now. I do think people try far too hard to disconnect a creator when something comes out about them. Yes, I believe in separating the artist from the art too, but I tend to feel that people are just making excuses for past fandom when they say things like, they didn't have much to do with it, or it was never good in the first place. Because for one thing, you don't know that for certain with the first one, because you weren't there, and for another, that doesn't have to be the case. And also, just liking work made by problematic people doesn't have any bearing on you as a viewer of those films and TV shows. There's a more complicated discussion to be had on whether you should be giving these creators money, of course, but in terms of the art's inherent value, that's a different topic entirely. And I felt it was important to point out that while Joss Whedon is an incredibly talented creative and key to the Buffy story, he's not the only part of the Buffy story. The creator is not always the be-all and end-all of a franchise that you like, especially in the TV industry. So with that out of the way, let's get to the show. The basic pitch for Buffy gets reiterated endlessly over the course of its first season. So you got this teenage girl having all the teenage girl experiences with high school and boys, but she's also destined to kill vampires via some ancient magic destiny thing. And that gets explained to us either by Giles or the trailer voiceover guy at the start of each episode in the early years.
In every generation, there is a chosen one.
She alone will stand against the vampires, the demons,
and the forces of darkness. She is the Slayer.
I swear they must have just copied bits of whatever pitch document they had for Buffy directly into the dialogue. Because it's like the show stops at various points and Giles is just flat out telling me to keep watching and get excited for next week's episode.
Not just vampires. The next threat we face may be something quite different.
I can hardly wait.
They just hammer Buffy's pitch so hard in a way that shows typically don't do these days. It probably feels a bit like blunt force trauma to modern audiences.
I know. If you don't go out, it'll be the end of the world. Everything is life or death when you're a 16-year-old girl.
Buffy just radiates dramatic irony everywhere, all across the show for the next 7 years. Dramatic irony is about half of what makes the entire thing work. So you got this town sitting on top of something called a Hellmouth, a mouth of hell, hence the name. And that Hellmouth causes all this mystical activity, and it's why vampires and demons are so rife. So naturally the town is called Sunnydale. They usually build decent context that lets the characters just spout the exposition throughout season 1 that lays all the groundwork before filling the place with high-concept demonic activity. But they do it in such a fun, funny and ironic way that you might not feel like you're being spoon-fed the world building. Best example of this, episode 1. Buffy's just started at Sunnydale High School. She meets the school librarian, Rupert Giles, who knows that she's the Slayer. When she first runs into him, he reveals that he knows who she is by trying to give her a book about vampires. She rejects him and runs away. Then a guy turns up dead with vampire bite marks in his neck, and she comes back to talk to him. Giles asks her this.
Will he rise again?
No, he's just dead. To make you a vampire, they have to suck your blood. And then you have to suck their blood. It's like a whole big sucking thing. Mostly, they're just gonna kill you.
So we later learn that Giles has been spending basically his entire life training to be a Watcher, Buffy's appointed guide in all things demon. He does already know the ins and outs of how vampire siring works already. And yeah, Buffy doesn't know that, they have just met. So her explaining how this works fine as an interaction. But the real reason this question and answer session is in there is so that we can get the mechanics of vampirism dumped to us, the audience. And we don't end up feeling like this has been written specifically to dump the world building on us because of the way that Buffy words her response. It's a whole big sucking thing. If she just explained it to us that to make somebody into a vampire, they have to suck your blood and they make you suck their blood, I'd just be sat there with a blank face and going, okay, I have absorbed that piece of information about the mechanics of this universe. Instead, if you make her talk like an actual human having to explain jargon to a layman, then I get invested in this conversation on a personal level. I really feel like this is a real teenage girl who's had this stupid destiny foisted upon her that she doesn't want, while also learning how this world works. This is a really smart approach to dialogue. The casual roundabout way of explaining pretentious grandiose backstory is an important part of the way Buffy was designed, because humour is pretty much guaranteed to get someone on side in a way that overwrought teenage melodrama that would typically have been the basis for a show like this usually doesn't. I've tried watching back teen dramas that I used to watch when I actually was a teenager in the years since, and I found I can't really gel with them in the same way I used to when I was younger, because I'm so far removed from these types of life experiences now. Trying to rewatch Smallville as a 30-something was particularly grating. I found myself grinding my teeth when I tried watching it again and cringing so hard that I felt I'd rip myself in half. I really couldn't click with the characters anymore in a way that I could with Buffy, because this loose and sarcastic approach to dialogue feels bouncy and energetic in a way that's pretty uncommon of teen dramas of this period. Buffy's actually got a lot more in common with sitcoms than teen drama. Your most fondly remembered lines and moments from Buffy are almost certainly going to be a 50-50 split between funny moments and serious moments.
Why did you come here? This wasn't your fight.
Are you trying to get yourself killed?
You can't leave me. I can't do this alone.
You can't just go Librum Incendere and expect...
Xander, don't speak Latin in front of the books.
In fact, Buffy seems to occupy a very similar space in my brain to Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the incredibly famous sitcom adaptation of the Archie comic that debuted to massive ratings not long before Buffy did. While Buffy will obviously have been in development prior to Sabrina's debut, the fact Sabrina was also a fantasy-themed show with a sarcastic blonde-haired magical main character who's also coming of age does make me think that some network executive somewhere probably mentioned Sabrina and the massive ratings it got at least once in a meeting about Buffy. They even name-checked Sabrina in an early episode about a witch.
So it's not her. The test was positive. She's our Sabrina.
Sabrina's also got a similar trio of high school main characters. The magical main character, Sabrina, Buffy, the dim-witted male side character, Harvey and Sabrina, Xander and Buffy. Sabrina starts with a brainy female side character who then gets swapped out for an underconfident neurotic one, and both of those traits end up becoming prominent in Willow. This seemed to be a thing in young adult fantasy at the time to have this balanced trio of young main characters. Harry Potter does this as well, super important main hero, dim male side character, brainy female one. Sabrina also has a bitchy high school nemesis in Libby Chesler, a cartoonishly mean brown-haired popular girl. Whereas in Buffy you have Cordelia, who fills basically the exact same role. Both of them are there to make a sneery face and call the main character a freak.
You're an even bigger freak than I thought, and the whole school's gonna know about it.
Looks like someone digs you. That's adorable. You and the Demi-Couture in the freak show.
Cordelia is actually an interesting point in how they evolved the premise out of Buffy's hokey, cheesy beginnings into this more richly textured tapestry of characters. Because after she's this caricature of the girl who bullied you in high school for most of the first season, towards the end of that season, Cordelia starts to show some actual growth. Charisma Carpenter is genuinely impressive in moments where you see another side to Cordelia. She learns that a student she ignored has literally turned invisible, and Cordelia, this Cordelia,
like this time I sort of ran over this girl on her bike. It was the most traumatizing event of my life, and she's trying to make it about her leg.
actually manages to empathize with this girl.
So are you saying she's invisible because she's so unpopular? It's awful to feel that lonely.
So you've read something about the feeling?
You think I'm never lonely because I'm so cute and popular? I can be surrounded by people and be completely alone.
Granted, Cordelia is self-centered and oblivious is still the running joke with her character for the next couple of years.
So this isn't about you being afraid of hospitals because your friend died and you want to conjure up a monster that you can fight so you can save everybody and not feel so helpless?
But this isn't inconsistent with the sincere streak in her, and it doesn't ever feel like the show is judging her for being the way she is, in the same way the movie feels like it's judging Buffy for her vacuity before coming of age and accepting her Slayer destiny. Cordelia just is the way she is, and she's also a fully rounded human. It's a great demonstration of the potential that characters like Cordelia had to grow into fully rounded people who aren't just hokey one-dimensional stereotypes. And the show displays this with all of its characters. As has been noted by billions of people who've written extensively about Buffy, Season 1 is essentially one long pilot, in which the premise of monsters serving as allegories for various high school experiences gets tested in various forms. I feel people are typically a bit unfair towards Season 1 because while yes, a lot of it's very hokey and cheesy, more so than any of its following seasons, I didn't really feel any kind of resentment when an episode was particularly bad, because the characters, while yes, I may be treating this partly with hindsight based on my affection that formed for them over the years, did come fully formed right from the start. I know who these people are, I know their insecurities and what they're for, based on the types of jokey, sarcastic lines they come out with that bounce off each other really nicely.
And I, in the meantime, will help by standing around like an idiot.
Not like an idiot, just standing.
Xander is sarcastic and underconfident, Willow is socially awkward but she means well. You get a really strong sense of who these characters are as people from exchanges like this. One of the more heavily slated Season 1 episodes is called Teacher's Pet. It's about Xander having a crush on their new biology teacher, a mysterious lady who has a fascination with praying mantises. Turns out she is a giant praying mantis in disguise. She lures him to her house and locks him up in the basement with another boy that she's lured there, reveals that she's the praying mantis, and decides on which one of them to eat first by doing this.
Meanie. Miney. Mo?
You may think, that's stupid, cheesy, lame and cringe at me describing this episode and showing that clip to you, which yes it is, but somehow I didn't cringe when I watched this, because of the framework of the series and the work they'd already done on Xander at this point. Xander has a crush on Buffy. He got made fun of for being a virgin at the start of the episode. He's been drawn to this wolf in sheep's clothing, gets to her house, and he wants to do something with her, but he finds he can't.
Your hands are so hot.
Oh, you hurt your hand.
Buffy. I love Buffy.
This scene felt real and earnest, and so I didn't really care just how cringe and stupid the confrontation in the basement was. Xander's already been through some serious shit by the time you hit this episode. The opening two-part episode does an exceptionally good job at getting you on side with the characters. Throughout Welcome to the Hellmouth, it looks like Willow and Xander's friend Jessie is another core part of the main cast. It's going to be a show where Willow, Xander, Jessie and Buffy are guided through demonic goings-on by Giles. Then, Jessie gets kidnapped and turned into a vampire, so now Xander has to reconcile the fact that one of his best friends is no longer who he was.
I'm sorry. Sorry? I feel good, Xander. I feel strong. I can hear the worms in the earth.
Okay, granted the drama of this kind of gets undercut by lines like this.
I'm sorry, Willow. We were too late, and they were waiting for us.
At least you two are okay.
Damn, that was cold, Willow. And yeah, Jessie never gets mentioned again. There's no real ongoing trauma over Jessie's death, which a show probably would make a lot more of if it was done these days. But I'm kind of glad the show doesn't dwell on everything that happens because so many people die. Some people matter, some people don't so much. So Buffy's mother made a new friend between seasons at her book club, and she gets killed in a zombie attack. Never mentioned again. So Willow's at a party. She's feeling awkward and uncomfortable when she overhears a former classmate saying something rude about her. She goes and finds a bed to lie down in. And shocked, she finds she's lying in bed next to a corpse with a weird symbol carved into his skin. And when Willow tells this story to Buffy, she's upset about this.
But Percy said I was a nerd.
Percy called you a nerd?
So yeah, there is stuff like that, but in terms of the core characters and the social fabric between them, the way they interact with each other, it's so well done that you don't actually notice the inconsistent morality on display most of the time, and it's because of the style of dialogue. With this style established in the opening 2 episodes of Season 1, it kind of makes sense to just throw out these simple concepts like a crush on a teacher, but the teacher's a monster. A girl who's ignored literally turns invisible. Just to test how the characters will react in these situations. And once you've tested them in this format, then you can truly dive in and experience the richness and depth of this world that can be hinted at in these small moments of emotional honesty that make you want to know more and go on a journey with these characters. The best of these moments in Season 1, where you see hints at what the show's truly capable of, comes in Nightmares, an episode where people's nightmares start coming to life. Xander randomly finds himself naked in class. Willow finds she has to sing in front of a live audience that's just appeared out of nowhere. But what's Buffy scared of? Turns out it's something much more personal. Buffy's mum and dad divorced recently and she doesn't see her father that often, so she values the time she gets to see him. He's meant to be coming to see her this weekend, but he seems to arrive early because he needs to talk to her about something. They sit together and everything around them goes out of focus. The only things you can see clearly are Buffy and her dad as he tells her that they got a divorce because of her.
It was you.
Me?
Having you.
raising you, seeing you every day. I mean, do you have any idea what that's like? You get in trouble. You embarrass us with all the crazy stunts you pull, and do I have to go on?
No, please don't. Why are you saying all these things?
Because they're true.
The fact this scene can sit comfortably alongside Cordelia's nightmare where her hair looks bad and she's forced to join the chess club is testament to just how hard this moment hits. It's incredibly difficult to strike the right balance between silly and serious, but Buffy somehow manages it through characters that feel incredibly well-rounded. They're bouncy and fun, but they also have real feelings that can get impacted by the weird goings-on in Sunnydale. And it's important the show hits both of these notes, because if it was just stupid or just melodramatic, there's no way that Buffy would have survived with the legacy it has today. I'm going to bring up I Saw the TV Glow again, mostly because I plan on jabbering about that film for the rest of my life to anyone who'll listen. But the thing it captures so beautifully is the type of show that sits at a halfway point between a kid and an adult so perfectly that when you saw Buffy as a kid, it felt like a show that was made for you, but that you shouldn't be watching. Buffy is, nominally speaking, a kid's show. It's got a stupid name, its protagonists are teenagers with a parental figure in the school librarian. It's about monsters, and one of the main locations is a nightclub where live bands play angsty rock music, ballads or trip-hop. But at the same time, the first episode sees this moment where suddenly a dead body falls out of somebody's locker.
Pause. She was starting fights. Snagged Lee. Well, I would have been blue, and she said it.
Buffy looks and feels like a kid's show, something that you might have seen in a live-action slot on Nickelodeon, but it feels like you shouldn't be seeing dead bodies in gruesome scenarios in a show like this. I first watched Buffy in a repeat block it was shown in on BBC Two in the early 2000s. What time do you think it was shown at? 8:30? 9 PM? Try 6:45 in the afternoon. Most of the more grotesque shots have been cropped or cut out when it was shown in this block, but they knew who this show was designed for. Kids who've just got home from school who need something to watch after dinner before they go to bed. I mean, look at some of these fight scenes. We're basically just watching goth Power Rangers, aren't we? You know, if we're being honest with ourselves. The age of the protagonists and stupid premises and monsters like the praying mantis lady seem to stick Buffy in the kids category, but the more grotesque side of it incites your average preteen to teen to get much more invested than if it went, yeah, we're a kids show, we can't show a bus full of people getting massacred by vampires. Take for example a more vigorously slated episode from season 1, I, Robot, You, Jane, in which the demon Moloch gets scanned inside a computer and starts getting students to do his bidding over the internet. Granted, yes, this episode has aged incredibly poorly, and those 90s computers are just adorable by modern standards, but the thing that sticks out to me is this scene. Dave, one of Moloch's recruits, is being told that he has to kill Buffy, but he can't do it, and he refuses the demon's command. Then a pop-up appears and starts writing this in first person from his perspective.
I'm sorry, I've been a terrible person. I'm a coward, and I can't go on living like this. Love, Dave.
So yeah, while I will agree with everybody that the ending where Moloch gets put inside that demon robot was stupid, cheesy and lame, this scene right here is still utterly chilling to me decades later. This nastier side of Buffy gave it its edge. You never felt patronised or talked down to by it, and so its characters' journeys felt real and visceral in a way that so many similar shows didn't. So rather than go through in a strictly linear season-by-season fashion like people usually do when analysing popular shows, I'm going to be flitting back and forth along the timeline as I discuss the ways in which the show dealt with the characters and their arcs, beginning in the most obvious place. I already mentioned Buffy's parents' divorce, and that is a key factor hanging over the series that sets events in motion. Although I'm not sure how I feel about this as a trope, because I kind of hate that divorce is typically always seen as an overwhelming negative by people, when you should try comparing conversations with people whose parents divorced with people whose parents probably should have divorced but didn't. And then you will understand exactly why the phrase "stay together for the kids" is the most utter bullshit thing that anyone has ever said. It's not to say the psychological effect of divorce on a child won't be hard, of course. It's understandably a very difficult thing for a child to go through as they watch their parents' marriage break down. Divorce is explored in Buffy's early years exceptionally well because it beautifully mirrors her Slayer origin story. Buffy is a girl who's had to grow up too fast. Being just 16 at the start of the show, you wouldn't expect her to be so sure of herself, but having this earlier incident in LA prior to the start of the show, around the time her parents split up, is the credible spark to make her into the girl that she is by episode 1. I feel they made the right decision in showing barely any flashbacks to her time in LA. Buffy pre-episode 1 only shows up occasionally in the odd flashback or two. LA Buffy is shown learning she's the Slayer in the season 2 finale in a collection of scenes that sort of remake her early awkward stumblings into fighting vampires that we see in the movie. Her first vampire fight is kind of played for laughs as she struggles to find her footing.
Oh, not the heart.
We then see her come home and go into the bathroom and listen to her parents argue.
Don't do that. Don't talk to me like I'm a kid.
Both of these scenes show the human side of Buffy. They show her readjusting to both her real-life new circumstances and her supernatural new circumstances. We don't see the conclusion of this process of rebirth and becoming, which I feel is the right move because LA Buffy and Sunnydale Buffy are essentially two separate people. Well, literally, one is Kirsty Swanson, one is Sarah Michelle Gellar. While the show kind of acts as a follow-on from the movie, references to LA Buffy seek to distinguish the show from the movie because they're worded in a way that sounds similar to but quite different to the events depicted in the movie. They say that LA Buffy was a cheerleader and Cordelia-esque in attitude. That is in the movie, but apparently she burned down the gymnasium and that got her kicked out of school. That doesn't happen in the movie, but now the show claims that that's what happened.
Wasn't that bad.
You burned down the gym.
I did. I really did.
Buffy's birth as the Slayer involved fire, vampires, expulsion, and her parents' divorce all at the same time. The two sides of her traumatic upheaval, both personal and supernatural, have created the Slayer that we know today, using the Slayer's story as a metaphor for a kid lashing out during drama in their home life. None of this is to say that Buffy doesn't hold on to the tiny pocket of her life where things were normal. Her parents are still on speaking terms, but she still feels like something's wrong there and that she's got something to do with it. Illustrated in that jaw-dropping scene in Nightmares. Buffy feeling like she's the problem gets referred back to a lot throughout the show. Her dad doesn't even show up when her mother, spoiler in case you're somehow unaware, dies in season 5. Even though her dad's obviously a piece of shit, Buffy does still feel like it's her fault that they split up. He only shows up occasionally in strange scenarios, most interesting of which is in the episode Normal Again in season 6. Buffy gets poisoned by a demon and gets visions of a parallel universe where her parents institutionalized her, believing that the Slayer thing was a delusion. And presumably in this reality, none of those world-ending events that Buffy averts throughout the show happened. The mayor didn't become a giant snake, Adam didn't create an army of demon-human super soldiers, Glory didn't destroy the world, because vampires and monsters and demons don't exist. They were created by Buffy as a means of understanding the personal world-ending tragedy of her parents' divorce and her expulsion. So Buffy is the cause of all the terrible things that happen. And her mother's not even dead in this timeline. Her mother dies of a brain aneurysm. That's got nothing to do with Buffy. Presumably Normal Again takes place parallel to where we are in season 6, so even Joyce's entirely natural death is the fault of her Slayer destiny, according to this world that her psyche has created as a result of her encounter with that demon. If that's your interpretation of Normal Again, Normal Again's ending is entirely ambiguous. It suggests the Slayer story could be a daydream by a troubled young girl. This sense that Buffy is the problem hangs over the series. Before she shows up, the characters refer to Sunnydale as a boring little town where nothing happens.
Gee, everyone wants to know about me. How keen?
Well, not much goes on in a one Starbucks town like Sunnydale. You're pretty big news.
But how can it have ever been boring? It's on a hellmouth. Monsters attack the school every week.
Buffy saved both of our lives.
Before she came here, our lives didn't need that much saving, did they?
Of course, none of this is to say that Buffy is the problem. She doesn't create all these threats. But the point is she's got to feel like it's all her fault and that she's created her own problems to make her fight against them feel more compelling for the audience. Her father's absence, alongside her role as protector of her friends, does a lot to flesh out the emotional problems that Buffy runs into throughout the show. At the end of season 3, the prospect of her going to college gets brought up, and the only option that she appears to have is UC Sunnydale. Because the town's on top of the Hellmouth, she has to stay here and lead her double life and protect people. But even just moving out into a dorm creates problems. Now her mother is home alone and vulnerable to any kind of attack, which happens when rogue Slayer Faith holds her hostage. And Buffy ends up feeling like she's neglecting her mother purely because she's gone off to college. In the dream episode, Restless, her subconscious mind creates this wonderful image of her walking the halls of UC Sunnydale and stumbling across her mother living behind a wall.
Why are you living in the walls?
Oh, sweetie, no, I'm fine here. Don't worry about me. You go find your friends.
Buffy feels that she can't be an independent person because everyone relies on her to deal with anything that comes their way. She starts out leading this double life and not telling her mother that she's the Slayer. Kids leading double lives are a big thing in these types of shows. Sabrina the Teenage Witch does this as well. She gets into all these farces where her boyfriend Harvey can't find out that she's a witch, and she has to come up with these ridiculous excuses for any magic that happens while he's around. The show any Zoomers watching this will immediately think of when I talk about double lives is Hannah Montana. But in Buffy, it's not just a vicarious fantasy whereby the kid watching this imagines that their life has so much importance that it requires a hidden identity. Sure, it makes sense on the surface not to tell Joyce that she's the Slayer. Her mother won't believe her, she'll think she's crazy, and we get the institutionalized timeline. Any enemies will go after her thinking she's a valuable emotional weak spot for Buffy. But not telling Joyce doesn't exactly protect her from physical harm as much as it might appear. In the season 1 episode Angel, Joyce accidentally invites Darla the vampire into their home, so Darla can set Angel up and turn Buffy against him.
A friend of Buffy's?
Oh, nice to meet you. Well, I know she's supposed to be home soon. Would you like to come in and wait?
Joyce wouldn't have trusted this girl if she knew that her daughter fought vampires all the time. The hidden identity aspect of her being the Slayer doesn't actually protect Joyce in and of itself. It's only really emotional fallout that's stopping her from telling her. Buffy feels the need to protect Joyce from not just the fact she's the Slayer, but the fact the divorce has affected her. The supernatural stuff and the real stuff run parallel to one another, but Buffy desperately wants to please her parents. She loves them both and she doesn't want to reveal any kind of long-lasting psychological damage that the new circumstances might be doing to her. Same as finding out she's the Slayer. Cause think here, Joyce is the last core character to know that she's the Slayer. Buffy loves Willow and Xander. Willow and Xander don't get quote-unquote protected from danger by being allowed to live in blissful ignorance of the vampire underbelly of a supposedly picturesque small town that's full of monsters and chaos 70% of the time. Willow's boyfriend Oz gets to find out by accident in the middle of season 2, and he says this.
I know it's hard to accept at first.
Actually, it explains a lot.
Yeah, why hasn't Joyce noticed that something's wrong? You can kind of excuse it when incidental characters refer to Sunnydale as having a reputation, but they don't know what that reputation is. But being this close to Buffy, it's got to be incredibly hard for not just Buffy to keep up this facade, but for Joyce to live in ignorance.
How many times have you washed blood out of my clothing and you still haven't figured it out?
And hell, Joyce grounding her for doing badly at school, something that's pretty understandable given the world's ending every 5 minutes, that's got to seriously stymie Buffy's ability to do her job. It would make sense if Joyce knew. The revelation at the end of season 2 when she finally tells Joyce is about as messy as you would have expected, and akin to a disowning.
You walk out of this house, don't even think about coming back.
Buffy's relationship with her mother is this beautiful balance between her being her emotional rock and her adversary. Buffy has this slow journey over the course of season 2 where she gets to the point where she needs her mother to know because the supernatural events are starting to affect her emotional state a lot more than they were previously. She loses her virginity to Angel, and that results in him turning evil. Protecting Joyce is becoming a lot more difficult. If Joyce didn't find out by accident when a vampire attacks right in front of her in the finale, which is a miracle it hadn't happened before then, she would have found out somehow.
Did she explode like that man out there?
I love Christine Sutherland's delivery of that line. But I do think Buffy was winding her way towards telling her mother eventually, because it just makes sense to do it. There are various ways of reading Buffy's relationship with the Slayer side of her life. The way Joyce initially reacts, and even after the disowning period and their reconciliation, it makes you think of this as a coming out story, where a kid reveals that they're somewhere under the LGBT umbrella to their parents, and the parents don't accept that. If that is your reading, then being the Slayer is both something that Buffy's mother initially fails to accept about her daughter, but also something that Buffy struggles to accept about herself. She frames being the Slayer as something that she didn't ask for and doesn't want.
Do you think I chose to be like this? Do you have any idea how lonely it is? How dangerous?
And she ends season 2 by running away from her responsibilities. The season 3 opener, Anne, sees her having run away to a city. She's living alone and working in a diner, trying to avoid people in her old life. Which, while I'm here, this just shows how badly some of this show has aged. How on earth is a 17-year-old girl renting an apartment in a big city on a waitress's salary?
Well, the rent's paid up for the next 3 weeks.
Really, Buffy? Really? Are you sure about that? But yeah, she's run away from her old life and her Slayer responsibilities. But supernatural scenarios still find her. A girl she helped in a previous episode in season 2 randomly bumps into her again, and she agrees to keep her identity a secret, but she needs help because her boyfriend's vanished. And Buffy just can't say no, because being the Slayer is more than a responsibility, it's part of who she is. Turns out this girl's boyfriend got kidnapped and taken to a dimension where demons force captive humans to work in their factory.
Time moves more quickly here than in your reality. 100 long years will pass here. On Earth, it's just a day.
Work us till we're too old and spit us back out.
That's the plan.
In this 9.5-hour video essay, I will be exploring the incredibly complex anti-capitalist themes in this episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer that you may have missed if you weren't paying attention. The running away incident is just one of many times that Buffy's vulnerabilities provoke some interesting drama, which are key to making her work as a hero. The problem with a character with superhuman powers is finding vulnerabilities to them that will mean you get interesting stories out of it. Because while yeah, we've all had fantasies of having the power of invisibility or super strength, and it's fun watching those play out, but you can't just have a character that can do anything with no consequences, because otherwise, what's the story about? Buffy as a character is this interesting compartmentalization of her two sides, capable Slayer and genuine teenage girl. And her weaknesses are usually either her need to protect her mother or her friends, or this feeling that she doesn't truly belong or that she's feeling displaced. While yes, she is the chosen one, quite a lot of episodes are about Buffy feeling unappreciated. The first notable case of this is in the 2-part episode What's My Line in Season 2, where it gets revealed that due to her brief death in the Season 1 finale, another Slayer has been activated by these mysterious mystical forces that just grant a random girl superpowers. Kendra, a girl who appears to have been training to be a Slayer for her whole life and follows all the rules. She doesn't have friends, works alone, and Kendra's appearance makes it clear to Buffy that Giles has gone pretty easy on her and treated her as if she wasn't really a proper Slayer.
I study because it is required. The Slayer handbook insists on it.
There's a Slayer handbook? Wait, handbook? What handbook? How come I don't have a handbook?
After meeting you, Buffy, I realized that the handbook would be of no use in your case.
We do the same basic story again when Faith gets called following Kendra's death. A storyline that works in tandem with Joyce's resigned acceptance of the Slayer side of her daughter, leading to non-acceptance and hoping that maybe the existence of another Slayer means that things can go back to normal, and she can just have her daughter Buffy again and not the chosen one.
Unless, you heard her, she loves the slang. Couldn't she take over for you?
So you got this confident and sure of herself superhero who can plan an offensive against a massive demon snake monster, but she's also flawed, vulnerable, human, and has these interesting emotional weak points. Fleshing this type of character out requires some hideously intelligent usage of monsters as allegories for a teenage girl's experiences happening alongside those actual teenage girls' experiences. And they also need an actress who was basically born to play this role. Sarah Michelle Gellar brings the character of Buffy to life in such a way where Buffy feels as real to you as anyone in your social circle. Granted, the monsters don't always feel totally necessary, and the one thing I think the show could have benefited from is the odd episode or two where they were absent entirely, and we just had the drama between the characters to play with. They seem to figure this out by season 6, and granted when they do it, it kind of drifts into straight teenage melodrama territory, but the main example I'm thinking of where the monsters are kind of unnecessary is Dead Man's Party from season 3. The episode immediately following Buffy running away. She returns to Sunnydale and there's this awkward tension between her and her mother, Willow, Xander and Giles over her running away without telling anyone where she went or why. The house didn't really need to be attacked by zombies. I was much more invested in Willow trying desperately hard to put a brave face on things and Buffy overhearing her mother saying this.
Having Buffy home, I thought it was going to make it all better, but in some ways, it's almost worse.
Granted, I am probably saying this because of how my tastes have changed as I've grown up. When I was a kid, I really didn't like Dead Man's Party at all because it was so awkward and dour and not as funny and fun as the show usually was. I'd also seen what Buffy was going through, so her friends acting this cold towards her felt jarring to me. But this episode makes a lot more sense to me now because her absence messed with their emotions, and they just don't know how to react to her coming back and trying to pick her life up again. Sure, they're not thinking about how Buffy feels, but their emotional responses to her return are understandable. I similarly didn't appreciate the Season 2 opener, When She Was Bad, as the complex portrayal of a character going through PTSD back when I first saw it as a kid, because, you know, I was 12. I hadn't experienced PTSD. I didn't get why Buffy's experiences were making her act so out of character. I'd also just come off the back of Season 1's big and intense action-packed finale, and I wasn't ready for something as emotionally confrontational as When She Was Bad. Now, I think this episode's a masterpiece. Overall though, Buffy's journey from childhood divorce through college to her early 20s to grappling with adult responsibilities after her mother's death works alongside her Slayer destiny incredibly well. I'll get to that key event later on, but using the apparatus of monsters to speak to these experiences of young adulthood is probably best exemplified by her most troubled early relationship. It's kind of impossible in the age of social media to talk about Buffy's first substantial love interest, Angel, the vampire cursed with a soul, without addressing how much more scrutiny the internet has put on age gap relationships. In a modern context, the incredibly popular and profitable vampire boom in young adult fantasy of the late 90s and 2000s, in which a teenage girl falls in love with a guy who's hundreds of years old, does look incredibly dodgy in hindsight. But I feel it's become a bit too easy to say that aged poorly, but also it's too easy to counter it with it was decades ago and they didn't know any better. Because I don't think either of these statements are totally representative of what was actually going on in Buffy's case in particular.
What do you think is happening?
You're 16 years old. I'm 241.
So, yeah, that's just made talking about this at all incredibly uncomfortable. Thing is though, I think it's a bit patronising and dismissive to say that Buffy and Angel's relationship was intended to be a romantic ideal, and therefore the show is bad for doing it. Sure, it looks that way when you see posters like this and heaps upon heaps of incredibly poorly aged fanfiction. But Buffy and Angel's relationship is quite openly supposed to be unhealthy. Almost all of the characters say it over and over again throughout those first 3 seasons before he leaves to star in a spin-off. This arc does involve Buffy literally killing him at one point. Buffy and Angel isn't #relationship goals. It's clearly a tragedy. This is kind of like the millennials equivalent of how Romeo and Juliet somehow became bywords for true love, when they literally end up dead at the end of the play. Oh sorry, spoiler warning. How could you do that, Stuart? I was going to see a production of Romeo and Juliet this weekend and you've ruined it now. It's part of the show's raison d'etre to present issues that teenagers would come up against through the lens of fantasy. And if you take the Buffy-Angel relationship as a whole instead of its component parts, it isn't really a celebration of massive age gap relationships so much as it is a cautionary tale. So at the start of the series, Buffy's new in town, and she runs into Angel for the first time in a street at night, and he says something weird and cryptic. Her initial reaction to him is this.
Did he say anything else?
Something about the mouth of hell. I really didn't like him.
However, over the course of the first season, where he keeps showing up to offer these cryptic clues, she starts falling for this mysterious stranger, who's presented as older than her. She doesn't know the extent of how much older he is at first, but he's obviously older. And the problem she finds is that by being older, he has all this history and context to him that might be a bit too dark for her to handle. This would be the same case if Angel wasn't hundreds of years old and didn't have a reputation for being one of the most twisted, violent and evil vampires who ever lived. He doesn't tell her what he is when he starts getting close to her. When hiding from some vampires, he spends the night in her room. He doesn't reveal to her that he's a vampire until their first kiss the next night, and it's by accident.
What? What's wrong?
And then she has to learn his history by reading what other people have written about him. None of this is good. It's not meant to be good. It's meant to be a red flag. But at the same time, you kinda see why she's drawn to him. He has this deep, seductive voice and talks in this darkly poetic way, which, yeah, makes you cringe decades later.
You're standing at the mouth of hell. And it's about to open.
Point is though, you kinda need the seductive element in there to make it believable that Buffy would be drawn to Angel despite the obvious red flags that he gives off at the start of their relationship. The red flags get even more red flaggy when we get the flashbacks to pre-Sunnydale Buffy in the Season 2 finale, where Angel first sees her and falls in love with her just before she learns of her destiny as the Slayer.
I am not having this conversation again, alright?
In a series of sequences that we now recognise as stalking. As their relationship develops, it takes outside voices to point out the obvious.
I mean, what kind of a future would she have really had with him? She's got 2 jobs, Denny's waitress by day, Slayer by night, and Angel's always in front of the TV with a big blood belly.
Well, yeah. What kind of future does she have with Angel? Angel's whole deal is that he's a vampire cursed with a soul, so he doesn't kill people anymore. So now he's harmless and is a good ally for Buffy because he has all this experience of demons and he's a strong fighter. But he's a vampire. She's the Slayer. She's meant to kill him.
Angel. You mean Angelus? I've read about him. He is a monster.
As with Romeo and Juliet, it's the allure of wanting something you either can't or shouldn't have. And as said, Romeo and Juliet end up dead at the end of the play. There's a reason for the forbidden nature of Buffy and Angel's love, because even though Angel has a soul, he's still a vampire. He can't go out in daylight. They find out later that he can't have sex with her without losing his soul and turning evil. And the fact Angel's lied by omission quite a lot throughout the early stages of their relationship are signals that a relationship with all these asterisks next to it isn't going to lead to any kind of future. I will admit though that quite a lot of the time in terms of its presentation, the show is a bit too sympathetic towards Angel. The being given his soul back and spending the next 100 years incapable of harming humans and feeling guilty and tormented over his past makes him into this sad, desperate, pathetic little puppy dog for Buffy to fix using love. This is typically how narcissistic older men seduce younger women in the real world. Poor me, nobody loves me, I need love to make me better, will you make me better? I guess it's just a hard balance to strike though, because Angel does deserve punishment, and the show does admit that. He spent his first 100 years as a vampire mercilessly slaughtering people and rejoicing in his cruelty. And the way he talks does kind of romanticize his torment.
I did a lot of unconscionable things when I became a vampire. Drusilla was the worst. She was pure, sweet, chaste.
There is a huge conversation to be had by people much smarter than me over the kind of psychological events that lead people like Buffy to be drawn to obviously dangerous monsters, which keeps happening over the course of the show. Her next boyfriend, Riley, seems fairly solid, but he turns out to be part of the Initiative, Season 4's ultimate villain. And then of course she ends up with Spike in Season 6, which is unreal levels of complicated. It makes you think of how Ted Bundy famously had women lining up to marry him despite, you know. From a pure storytelling standpoint though, I think it's an important detail that at the end of the Season 2 finale, Buffy is put in the uncomfortable situation where she has to still stab Angel with a sword and send him to hell just after Willow's spell has worked and he's had his soul restored. It worked, she could have got what she wanted, but it's too late. Rejection of Angel is what's good for her, even though it's painful. She had to learn this lesson. When it comes to the act that removed Angel's soul in the first place, Angel was cursed and that restored his soul, so he can no longer drink the blood of humans and is racked with guilt for the rest of his miserable existence. The curse isn't foolproof though. He will lose his soul again if he ever has one moment of true happiness, and this happens when Buffy sleeps with him for the first time. This is obviously used as a metaphor for a guy that a girl was so sure about that she slept with him, and she finds that he changes into a different person now that he's got what he wanted.
Was I not good?
You were great. Really. I thought you were a pro.
And Buffy ends up blaming herself for this because, functionally speaking, yes, she was party to the act that caused him to lose his soul.
What do you mean?
Well, something set it off. Some event must have triggered his transformation.
I don't.
Well, did anything happen last night that
Giles, please. I can't.
Buffy, I'm sorry, but we can't afford to...
But should she entirely blame herself, though? It does take two to tango. An Angel might not know that true happiness removes his soul again, but he does know that pursuing Buffy is wrong and that they have no future together. This becomes pretty obvious to him fairly quickly, and he starts asking the same question that everyone else starts asking about their future together, even before they do the thing that removes his soul.
So you don't think about the future?
Angel, when I look into the future, all I see is you.
But he doesn't do anything to stop it though. He sees the sex that he ends up having with Buffy as inevitable. Even with a soul, Angel is still pathetic, coercive and self-interested, and he is supposed to be. Even after learning that happiness removes his soul and them existing in this abstinent state for a while, in the season 3 episode Amends, he admits that a part of him doesn't care.
You told me to lose my soul in you and become a monster again.
What does it matter?
Because I wanted to! Because I want you so badly!
So yet the show does know that the Buffy-Angel relationship is wrong, and it screams that in the viewer's face for basically the entire time it's happening. However, this is a show for teenagers, and as such there are quite a lot of these rather steamy scenes of them whispering sweet nothings into each other's ears, and long lingering shots of them eating each other's faces, which play differently now that I'm watching this as an adult in the 2020s.
I feel like I lost you.
Point is, the consequences of the commencement and continuation of this relationship are in the story. You can't pretend that they're not there or that they don't obviously matter. In season 3, when Angel gets brought back from hell after she killed him, we have another of those episodes which has aged pretty poorly, Beauty and the Beasts, where a student at Sunnydale is in an abusive relationship with a guy with a Jekyll and Hyde thing going on. And it's set alongside Buffy discovering that Angel has returned and been driven mad by his time in hell. And that sets off the season's character arc of Buffy rationalising her still wanting to be with Angel despite the fact that violence is all over their relationship. They both try and convince themselves that they're just friends for a while as he recovers from his time in hell and regains his sentience. But they just sort of naturally wind up back together, and Buffy is still in deep denial about their potential future, or lack thereof. Angel's figured out by this point that they can't last, and it takes Joyce coming to talk to him to finally push him into doing the right thing.
But I think we both know that there are some hard choices ahead. If she can't make them, you're gonna have to.
And so he does. If the show was endorsing this relationship, it would be sustainable, but it isn't. It's not even sustainable in this episode of the spin-off show, Angel. In I Will Remember You, Buffy comes and visits him at this new demon investigation business he's set up in LA. Angel gets infected by demon blood and that makes him human again. It's exactly what they both always wanted, but that doesn't work out either. Because now Angel can't fight demons, and Buffy's going to be focusing all her energy on protecting him. And so he sacrifices this potential renewed relationship with Buffy by asking these Oracle people to turn him back into a vampire with a soul again, because he's just that wonderful and selfless. Which does kind of feel like the show giving up and throwing up its hands and going, fine, all those red flags were bullshit, Angel is actually a martyr. Of course you kind of have to do that because, you know, it's Angel, it's his show. Point is, looking back at all of this and reading modern reactions to Buffy and Angel's relationship, and various other old story arcs from TV shows that people claim have aged badly, I feel in the age of internet discourse and re-evaluation of pop culture institutions of the past, there is this tendency to ascribe a naivety to these shows that isn't actually demonstrated by the text itself. I pointed this out with friends as well. Clickbait articles keep popping up pointing out toxic things that Ross said and did, when that was the point. If characters didn't do bad things, then what lessons would they be learning? Contextualizing the past with "it was a long time ago and attitudes have changed" is the right thing to do, obviously. You can't judge old popular media with our current standards, but don't assume it's agenda, because Buffy and Angel don't work together, and the show knows that. And this point connects up nicely with a character that people tend to have a similar problem with. I feel it would be quite easy to analyse Xander in the modern day through the lens of the word incel. And sure, Xander can feel a bit incel-y throughout those first few seasons. Or not incel-y, but trending in that direction. At the start of the show, Xander is a teenage boy, even if, yes, Nicholas Brendon really didn't look like it because, again, this is a show for teenagers in the late 90s. And to his credit, Nicholas Brendon really managed to nail this role as a character whose personality is what has rendered them unappealing to most people. Rest in peace. Xander's obviously been bullied his whole life and has developed a sarcastic sense of humour as a defence mechanism. As a character, he's incredibly similar to Chandler Bing off of Friends. He's proclaimed a dork and a loser by Cordelia, but his best friend is Willow. So the key female figures in his life before Buffy arrives are either mean to him or are basically his little sister, who doesn't really count as a girl.
That's why you're so cool. You're like a guy. You're my guy friend that knows about girl stuff.
Oh, great. I'm a guy.
So therefore he's developed a malformed view of the opposite sex. Cordelia is kind of in the same category as his mother, who we rarely meet, but we get this early hint in season 2 that his mother either has contempt for him or basically ignores him, in this line, which just left me feeling cold.
Mom, hi. Xander.
Jesus. Granted, there is the odd glimpse of Xander's mother that sits wrong, like in this season 4 episode where Xander's now living at home in the basement and Giles comes over.
Sure, they're not ready to deal with...
Xander!
Yes, Mom?
I made a nice fruit punch for you and your friend. Would you boys like some?
However, this could just be his mother putting on a face for someone who was formerly an authority figure at Xander's school coming over, because I know that emotionally distant and/or abusive parents do that. Xander has been made to feel as if the state of his relationship with his parents is all his fault. Up until his wedding to Anya in season 6, the only time that we actually see either of his parents on screen is when his father shows up in the dream episode, Restless. Xander has been made to live in the basement at this point, and his parents have started charging him rent. They've discarded him, chucked him into this pit from which he has to claw his way out. They did this to him, and yet the dream manifestation of his father says this.
You won't come upstairs? What are you, ashamed of us? Your mother's crying her guts out.
So subconsciously, Xander thinks it's all his fault for making his parents treat him as this easily discardable object. They sent him to the basement, but he's got to climb out of it because being down there is making his mother cry, and he feels like he can't do that and solve the problem because there's something wrong with him.
And you're not gonna change that. You haven't got the heart.
A result of his unbalanced relationship with his parents and emotional neglect in his upbringing is that he says and does lots of quite dodgy things. Buffy shows up in Sunnydale at the start of season 1, and he's interested in her immediately because he's a teenage boy and Buffy is unlike any girl that he's ever met before. Strong, confident, but importantly, benevolent towards him. The show builds this very one-sided will they won't they storyline across season 1. Buffy obviously has no interest in him outside of friendship. Xander does have interest in her beyond friendship. This leads up to him finally expressing it in the season 1 finale. She shoots him down and he says this.
I just don't think of you that way.
We'll try.
Now, yes, that's a very toxic thing to say, but he is a teenage boy at this stage, and people don't come preloaded with all this knowledge of how to navigate relationships. They've got to learn somehow. And to Xander's credit, he does learn. Sort of. It just takes him a while. While he feels emasculated by laying his feelings on the line and getting rejected, he doesn't see her differently or resent her afterwards. He resents the guy that she does want, sure, but I kind of have a different read on that to most people, given I'm under no illusions that Angel was ever good, even when he was technically good. Xander is confrontational towards Angel for pretty much Angel's entire time on the show, and it's clear that most of that comes from bitterness concerning the fact that Buffy wanted Angel and not him. But I don't think it's entirely that. Xander does put his bitterness to one side when it matters, like in this scene in the season 1 finale not long after she's rejected him.
How can I say this clearly? I don't like you, but Buffy's got this big old yin for you. She thinks you're a real person, and right now I need you to prove her right.
And while his dislike of Angel is motivated partly, yes, by spite, there's also a dash of him feeling the need to protect Buffy from something that is ultimately dangerous for her that she doesn't recognise as dangerous. Because Xander does have a very good reason to dislike Angel. Angel's a vampire and is giving off red flags all over the place, even when he has a soul. Given, as said, the internet has completely transformed people's view of relationships like Buffy and Angel's, while a lot of millennials may still be viewing Buffy and Angel's relationship through warm, rose-tinted spectacles, I could imagine a lot of younger Gen Z people watching this for the first time and coming away with a lot more respect for Xander than people used to. Alright, yes, he does mislead Buffy by not telling her that Willow's working on restoring Angel's soul, so he is partly responsible for the difficult scenario where she has to kill him in the season 2 finale.
Willow, she told me to tell you, kick his ass.
I'm not saying Xander's perfect or right to try and interfere to get Buffy to ditch Angel. That is something that she needs to decide for herself. But Angel did still kill Jenny Calendar, and I don't see his motives in misleading Buffy here being entirely self-serving. He has accepted by this point that he and Buffy are friends and he's not looking for an opening, but Angel is dangerous and his point of view is that Buffy can't see that. I think it's more the fact that he's kind of annoying that grates on people with Xander rather than the actual stuff that he does, because as I said with Angel, characters do shitty things sometimes. If they didn't, then what would the drama be about? Because yes, Xander does shitty things sometimes and he makes mistakes, and a lot of them happen in his first proper relationship, which ends up being with Cordelia, the girl who relentlessly bullied him when he was growing up. The relationship's almost initiated as a joke, at the point where they're stuck together in a basement hiding out from a man made out of bugs. Yeah, it feels weird to be taking a scene like this so seriously. Xander and Cordelia are waiting for Buffy to rescue them. Cordelia wants to run, Xander wants to wait. And as they scream at each other, suddenly something snaps and they end up kissing for the first time.
Moron.
I hate you!
I hate you!
But Xander's relationship with Cordelia in Season 2, followed by breakup in Season 3, does give him the opportunity to navigate bitterness and come out the other side as a better person. He doesn't exactly handle his relationship with Cordelia well. They argue constantly throughout basically all their scenes together. There really isn't that much difference between Xander and Cordelia pre-relationship, mid-relationship, or post-relationship.
And Mitch and Harmony? This is all about me. Me.
Wow, for once she's right.
We're in my daddy's car. There is a beautiful, big full moon outside tonight. It doesn't get more romantic than this. So shut up! I don't want to get stuck with another dud.
Well, this should work for you. It positively screams nympho.
It's not even really clear at any point what they like about each other. And while Cordelia does have a softer side that comes out a lot more in the spin-off Angel, where she's a main character, in terms of her relationship with Xander, she acts in the capacity of the type of person that Xander seems drawn to, considering his neglected upbringing. In this Season 4 episode, Something Blue, Willow notes the through line between the women that he's attracted to.
Insect lady, mummy girl, Anya. You're a demon magnet.
Which does make sense, considering his frame of reference for a loving relationship involves sitting in the corner while his family argue, or sleeping outside on the lawn on Christmas Day to get away from everything. If Xander didn't have good influences in his life like Willow, Buffy and Giles, his family probably would have screwed him up a lot more than he is. So his relationships end up being with Cordelia, who considers him to be beneath her for pretty much the entire thing. She even breaks up with him on Valentine's Day because of peer pressure from her friends. Or Rogue Slayer Faith, who uses him for one night, and with whom he thinks he has some kind of relationship now because he conflates animosity with meaning.
Yeah, but we hung out a little recently, and she seemed to be, responsive.
She doesn't take the guys that she has a connection with very seriously.
And so his final destination, well, not final, but basically final, in his relationships ends up being with Anya, a former vengeance demon who helped scorned women take revenge on men for 1,000 years, who's now lost her powers. And she doesn't even know why she's attracted to him and treats the beginnings of her relationship with him like some kind of warped science experiment.
You're funny and you're nicely shaped, and frankly, it's ludicrous to have these interlocking bodies and not interlock.
Anya's basically an alien with absolutely no knowledge of what being a human's like, and Xander becomes her boyfriend and also essentially her teacher, advising her on how to behave. Like Cordelia, he shows quite a lot of contempt for Anya. He only really accepts her asking him to the prom in Season 3 because he's got no one else to go with, and it's played as a comedy bad date as he has to listen to her reciting violent anecdotes from her demon days the entire evening.
What a mess. Of course, you know, during the plague, it was always parts falling off.
One of my favourite scenes between them is in Graduation Day Part 1. We're building up to the mayor completing the Ascension, wherein he turns into a massive demon snake that's going to eat everybody. Anya, being one of the only living creatures who's ever witnessed an Ascension, warns Xander that the best course of action is to run. This is another instance of the show just hammering that dramatic irony so hard that it feels like being physically beaten. Because a few episodes earlier, Xander, having accepted that he's not clever enough to get into college, buys a copy of On the Road and proposes a wistful romantic adventure across the US after graduation.
Kerouac. He's my teacher. The Open Road, my school.
Making the open dumpster your cafeteria?
Go ahead, mock me.
After realizing and accepting he's probably going to die during the Ascension, Anya comes to him in the midst of their plans to take down the mayor and offers him this escape and adventure with her.
You could come with me.
Come with you.
We could just get in the car and drive, and no one would miss us. We could take turns driving.
Xander has been made out to be this completely hopeless, desperate, pathetic loser who thinks about sex constantly. So this is his ideal fantasy here that she's offering him. But he turns her down. He does the right thing in the end because his friends need him. He also does the right thing when he finds out Cordelia's family is now broke and she can't afford to rent her prom dress, and it's implied that he pays for it for her, even though they hate each other and that bridge is totally burned at this point. Granted, there are occasions where the show is a bit too self-congratulatory about Xander's morality. Like in the episode Bewitched, Bothered and Bewildered, where after his breakup with Cordelia, he gets Amy to cast a spell to get back at Cordelia to fall hopelessly in love with him so he can reject her to her face. And the plot is designed to teach him a lesson, where the spell backfires and now every woman in Sunnydale falls in love with him, including Buffy, who propositions him.
Don't open that raincoat.
Come on, it's a party.
And the show has to, for some reason, congratulate Xander for saying no, when...
I remember begging you to undress me. I also remember that you didn't. There might just be hope for you yet.
It should be expected, shouldn't it? Well, yes, it might say something about Xander that his ideal relationship that he ends up having with Anya primarily consists of him being the teacher instructing her on how to act like a normal human being. You gotta admit there's this nice cooperative back and forth where Anya knows what to do when there's a demon in the house, while Xander knows what to do in social situations.
No, it's the parvo demon. Drowning is the only way to kill it. Please go.
Anya, the Shopkeepers Union of America called. Please go. Just got replaced with have a nice day.
But I have their money. Who cares what kind of day they have?
While yeah, he has an annoying sense of humour and there's some awkward narrative glazing that sits wrong, the story of Xander is largely of a man learning to accept that there are things he can't change and that he can't have control over. He's not passive, but he knows his limitations, and it's a mostly positive story of watching him grow out of these toxic traits, like his jealousy over Angel getting in the way of his friendship with Buffy, learning to let go of his grudge against Cordelia, accepting that his friends have moved on and gone to college, but that's just not how his life has worked out. He lives in the basement at his parents' house for a while, but he's going to find his way out of it eventually. He tries bartending. That doesn't work out. He's an ice cream man for a while. He gets a construction job, finds he's good at it, and eventually that becomes his career and he moves out. His relationship with Anya gets serious and he eventually proposes to her. Granted, yes, this completely falls to pieces, more on that later, but I find it disappointing that there is this tendency within the Buffy fandom to hate on Xander for some of his more toxic traits across those first few seasons, when he's learning. He learns to stand back, get control of his emotions, and help where he can. While his best friend, on the other hand, starts out as the one in control of her emotions and then loses it. One of the things I always loved about Buffy's approach to magic was it seems to just be something that you can join if you want and can be good enough at it if you work hard enough. While I liked Harry Potter when I was a kid, the exclusivity of magic did always bother me. You have to be born magic. You either are or you aren't. Granted, Chosen One stories always have that to some degree, as Buffy does, and kind of act as wish fulfillment fantasy. The kid projects onto said Chosen One and imagines themselves as the hero. But I feel Buffy's depiction of magic is more egalitarian. Willow starts out as your average human who's really smart but neurotic and underconfident, and her route into magic comes through influence from her friendship with Buffy and Giles, and she discovers there's this whole community of people interested in magic where she feels accepted, and eventually finds the love of her life in Tara. She starts practicing magic, just simple things like floating pencils, but she finds she's good at it, and she has fun doing it, and it can also be beneficial in Buffy's fight against evil. Granted, magic ends up becoming her undoing, but magic is less the cause of Willow's problems, and the problem is more in how she allows her obsession with magic to consume her life. But at its root, Willow's use of magic is a hyperfixation that she finds gives her life meaning. Magic ultimately gives her confidence, which was sorely lacking in her upbringing. Like Xander, Willow's family is largely kept off screen, and her parents clearly only ever valued academic achievement in their household. Although Willow has proven herself to her parents by being really smart and never putting a toe out of line until she developed an interest in magic, they still didn't really make any attempts to understand her at all. Willow's introduced in the first episode wearing a dorky outfit for which Cordelia makes fun of her, and she says this in response.
Oh, well, my mom picked it out.
No wonder you're such a guy magnet.
Following this incident, her outfits tend to be these nice bright colours, jumpers and dungarees, which reflect the fact that Willow stays largely childlike for the first few seasons.
Why couldn't Xander be possessed by a puppy or some ducks?
In this early period, Willow's very much a character living under a definition that her parents have created for her. We only ever meet Willow's mother once, in the episode Gingerbread in Season 3. Her mother uses all this psychological terminology to refer to Willow, almost as if she's somebody else's daughter.
Oh, well, identification with mythical icons is perfectly typical of your age group. It's a classic adolescent response to the pressures of incipient adulthood.
It's not clear whether Sheila Rosenberg is a child psychologist or some profession in that realm. Personally, I think she's just a mother who over-prepared for having kids. She read all the relevant books and is intellectually curious about children, but has incredibly little emotional intelligence. And her emotional neglect of Willow means that it kind of makes sense that we only see her just this once, and it's in the context of her taking charge of Willow's life when she sees a bad influence in Buffy that's led her daughter to witchcraft. Willow being raised in this way has led her to this state where she's quite naive and easy to take advantage of, because she's never been allowed agency by her parents, and therefore is essentially still a child, even in her late teens. So when Willow is allowed to make her own decisions, she doesn't spot the red flags. For example, when she goes off with a vampire at the end of the very first episode after taking Buffy's advice to
Seize the moment, because tomorrow you might be dead.
Which sparks Buffy's first ever case of having to save Xander and/or Willow. She got taken in by the demon Moloch in the Demon in the Internet episode that I mentioned earlier. She's seen by her parents as the child rather than a person, and so that's how she treats herself. And as such, while Willow is possibly the most adorable character ever written in those first couple of years, it's in Gingerbread where she starts to properly grow up. She's got some agency via magic and makes a stand against her mother.
I'm a rebel. I'm having a rebellion. I worship Beelzebub. Do you see any goats around? No, because I sacrificed them.
While magic can be good for her and gives her this confidence, she ends up being protective of her magic as a result, and her need to protect her interest in magic ends up going too far, and she lashes out at her friends whenever they show concern over her overuse of it. There's a few episodes in Season 4 that demonstrate this. Willow's now gone off to college. She's finding the experience freeing and filling her with this sense of power. And Buffy and Giles express concerns when she wants to do certain spells. In the episode Fear itself, they're lost in a house where Halloween decorations have come to life. Willow wants to do a simple locator spell, and she and Buffy end up having a blazing argument over it.
Well, let's be realistic here, okay? Your basic spells are usually only about 50-50.
And because people's fears come true in this episode, Willow does the spell and it backfires, because Buffy doubting her has made her nervous. In Something Blue, she admits to Giles that she tried to do a spell to have her will done, and he expresses concerns.
A spell? Well, I don't think it's wise for you to be doing that alone right now. Your energy's too unfocused.
While sure they have reasons for being concerned, because these are spells that backfire, Buffy and Giles are both unknowingly recreating the conditions of Willow's childhood here. Willow had proven herself to be a competent witch at this point. She restored Angel's soul in the Season 2 finale. That's presumably a very difficult thing to do, right? But as with her parents with her academic achievements, no matter how much Willow proves herself, she's still treated like she can't handle herself. While yes, it does make sense for them to show concern over Willow's use of magic, it is dangerous for them to both approach this with too much caution, because magic gave her the agency that her parents never gave her. And now she feels that any attempt to take magic from her would reveal her to be the person that she was before, and who she fears that she still is. A dorky child made to wear an unfashionable outfit given to her by her parents. And that fear is revealed in her dream in Restless. A dream version of Buffy insists that what she's wearing now, her adult outfit that she picked out herself, is just a costume.
Why are you still in costume?
Okay, still having to explain wherein this is just my outfit.
Willow, everybody already knows. Take it off.
Willow's deeply insecure that this new identity that she's given herself as a competent witch will be torn away, and that she'll be the kid under her parents' thumb again. So it kinda makes sense that the thing that ends up giving her agency, magic, ends up becoming both a net benefit to her life and also the cause of basically every bad thing that happens to her. And not just the addiction that she suffers in season 6, the pitfalls of magic are all over the series. While it's not her magic in the season 2 episode Bewitched, Bothered and Bewildered that causes her to develop a violent obsession with Xander, it is still magic. Spells gone wrong are a regular thing for an episode to be about across seasons 3 through 6. But based on her upbringing, why wouldn't Willow overlook the downsides of magic and continue to indulge in it? A huge chunk of Willow plots, magic related or not, are about her feeling like a loser and trying desperately hard to fit in and emulate what she thinks a normal functioning human is like. Such as when she wants to have sex with Oz for the first time. She thinks to herself, okay, how do I entice a man? Soft lighting and Barry White? That's what normal people do when they want to indicate sex, right?
We could... I'm ready to... with you.
Key among the episodes showcasing her development is one of the best episodes of the show, Doppelgangland, where a version of Willow from an alternate universe where she becomes a vampire gets brought into their world. And there's a lot of comedic misunderstandings where people think that Vampire Willow is human Willow. While Willow's terrified of her vampire counterpart, she doesn't let Buffy stake her because she recognizes something of herself in her.
I just can't kill her. I mean, I know she's not me. We have a big nothing in common, but...
Vampire Willow is the person that Willow could be if she didn't care what people thought of her. The show tries to insist that a vampire's not the person that it used to be. When a person gets vamped, they're dead, and a demon is basically walking around with their body. But that doesn't appear to be quite true.
Willow, just remember, a vampire's personality has nothing to do with the person it was.
Well, actually...
Angel is a vampire with a soul. How does that work if he's just a thing that's walking around wearing the skin of a guy who's supposed to have died over 200 years ago? Likewise, Vampire Willow represents her darker impulses, and while she's outwardly grossed out by her, there's clearly a darkness in Willow that she recognizes in this vampire version of her. It's the side of her that resents her parents for infantilizing her and wants to lash out at people who wrong her, who want to take her magic away from her, because she sees those people as stand-ins for her parents. No matter how often she proved herself to her parents, it was never enough. But now, magic makes her enough. She wants to prove that she's not the Willow she was in high school, a dorky loser with nothing to show for herself except academic achievements. Season 6 makes it abundantly clear that the desperation to reject her older self is gonna lead to her undoing. She even refers to it at the start of the key fight scene where Tara voices her concern that she's using too much magic.
Yeah, hard to believe such a hot mama llama came from humble, geek-infested roots.
Given you're spending dozens of episodes with these characters, you get used to them, and so noticing changes in their behaviour is hard because their growth feels natural to you. It took until Willow says this really quite cruel line here for me to realise just how much she'd changed by this point.
What do you want me to do? Just sit back and keep my mouth shut?
Well, that'd be a good start.
In this episode, Tabula Rasa, where a spell gone wrong causes everyone to lose their memories, I noticed that Alison Hannigan gives Willow's voice that much more childlike inflection that she'd lost a few seasons prior.
Tara, and look, I'm a student at UC Sunnydale.
Me too. Hey, maybe we're study buddies.
In Tabula Rasa, Willow seems far removed from who she was for most of seasons 5 and 6, because the Willow that's lost her memory doesn't know why she's forcing herself into a mould that she doesn't fit into. Memory loss Willow doesn't remember the fear that being perceived as high school Willow struck into her.
If you could be the plain old Willow or Super Willow, who would you be?
You don't need magic to be special.
Don't I? Buffy, who was I? Just some girl.
All of this is probably why Willow and Giles got on so well, because he has a very similar backstory of being clearly gifted, followed by rebellion. And while Giles demonstrates the follies of overindulgence in magic to Willow, the dangers are a lesson that she needs to learn personally. At the start of the show, it's a standard high school teen drama but with monsters. And in a high school teen drama, there's always kid characters and a few grown-ups for the kids to look to for support whenever things get out of control, and Giles is typical of this type. Almost too typical. He's stuffy, British, wears glasses, and complains about young people's music.
Go on, say it.
It's not music, it's just meaningless sounds.
There wouldn't really be much to say about Giles if he just stayed as this supporting role to open a dusty old tome every now and then and read about this week's monster. And while he's posh and judgmental, he starts the process of becoming more interesting when, after their first principal gets eaten by a group of students possessed by hyenas. Yeah, did I mention this show's dumb? Like, really, really dumb sometimes? Giles gets forced by the new school principal Snyder to produce the school talent show in the episode The Puppet Show in Season 1. Having this jumped up little gremlin standing alongside him as he gives this tired look makes him more human and relatable.
Kids. I don't like them.
But Giles is at his most interesting when we learn that he had a wild streak when he was younger in the Season 2 episode The Dark Age. When he was younger, him and his friends shared a flat where they would summon a demon to possess one of them, in the first of the show's many heavy-handed uses of magic as a metaphor for drugs.
We practiced magics, and Ethan and I discovered something bigger. It was an extraordinary high.
This episode is incredibly similar to The Principal and the Pauper, the famous Simpsons episode where it turns out that the upstanding, boring, stuffy figure of authority, Principal Skinner, had a wild youth, and a long journey to becoming the boring, stuffy figure of authority that we know him as today, which is a persona that he essentially took on as corrective action for his past behaviour. Coincidentally, this episode was only broadcast a few weeks after The Simpsons' famous stumbling block.
Those who recall my fight to outlaw teenage rudeness may be shocked to learn that I myself was once a street punk.
This story acts to demonstrate to the kids watching it not to put the adults in your life into little boxes where you assume who they are and how they're going to act based on the limited view that you've had of them. And of course, like everything, this has to be openly said. Go on, Buffy, summarise the themes at the end of the episode for us.
I'm so used to you being the grown-up, and then I find out that you're a person.
Most grown-ups are.
And then Buffy looks directly out of the screen and says, I hope you're taking note of this, kids at home. This adds a lot more depth to what was a highly questionable setup dumped in our laps at the start of the show. I can see where the idea for Giles sprang from, although the logic of the lore behind it is incredibly questionable. It kind of makes sense from a conceptual standpoint that the Watchers Council is based in England. Americans seem to think that we live in this magical fairy tale kingdom of castles and dragons. So in Buffy you got the one slayer in all the world destined to kill the vampires, and this council of English people in a land far, far away who send a man called her Watcher to guide the slayer in all things demon. But looking at this logically, this doesn't make a lick of sense. One girl in the entire world and a ton of Watchers overseas with all these strange rules and rituals who track down the girls who might be chosen as the next Slayer. But once the Slayer's been chosen, they seem to have barely any actual contact with her. They just make her do stuff in a certain way just because. In the Season 3 episode Helpless, the council put her through a test that's apparently a rite of passage for a Slayer on her 18th birthday that involves drugging her so she loses her powers and putting her mother in mortal danger at the hands of an insane vampire.
My own mother was a person with no self-respect of her own, so she tried to take mine. But she's dead to me now, mostly because I killed and ate her.
The Watchers Council is honestly more like a death cult than a governing body that does the admin for whatever mystical forces pick Buffy as the destined one to kill the vampires. Like, does anyone find it really weird and suspicious that Watchers get paid and Slayers don't?
Mr. Giles will stay here as my official Watcher, reinstated at full salary, to be paid retroactively from the month he was fired.
In Season 6, money becomes a problem for Buffy, and she has to get a job at the Double Meat Palace. But she's fighting demons. She's saving the world. Presumably the Watchers Council want her to save the world, right? Apparently they're rolling in money.
Can they really do the stuff they threatened? Kick you out of the country?
This stuff, the bureaucracy, the pulling of political strings, they're the best in the world.
Surely she'd be a more effective demon fighter if she didn't have to spend all her time worrying about keeping a roof over her head.
She's a Slayer. She saves the whole world.
But that means she's gonna have, like, crap jobs her whole life, right? Minimum wage stuff.
Yeah, we're looking at a seriously corrupt institution with the Watchers Council, right? Giles describes the Watchers Retreat basically like a 5-star holiday resort.
There is a Watchers Retreat every year. There's horse riding and hiking and punting. It's a great honor to be invited. Also, I'm told.
And he doesn't even get invited. But presumably he's the Watcher, right? She's the chosen one. Surely Giles is famous in that community. Granted, she doesn't actually end up being the chosen one. Her brief death at the end of season 1 causes another Slayer to be called, so now there's 2. Potential Slayers sometimes get given their own watchers in this universe. Kendra's supposed to have been training for years. Faith shows up in Sunnydale after a vampire is supposed to have killed her watcher, so I get that this is a large globe-spanning operation. But you'd think the Watchers Council would show Giles a bit more respect, given he's the Slayer's watcher. They fire him for sabotaging the 18th birthday test, but they don't seem to treat him with that much dignity throughout the show. But Giles has to be disrespected because it's easier to have sympathy for the underdog. After he gets fired, he's just the school librarian now, and Buffy gets given a new watcher in Wesley, who's like Giles, stuffy, British, awkward, and also younger and disrespectful towards him.
Of course, training procedures have been updated quite a bit since your day. Much greater emphasis on field work.
Really?
But we all root for Giles, of course, because we've grown to love him by this point. And he only did the thing that got him fired because the test drove a wedge between him and Buffy and put her mother in danger. And he's basically become Buffy's father by this point in the show. Which makes sense given Buffy's biological father is AWOL for almost the entire show. Giles is the primary male figure in her life who supports her and will do anything for her. Although, like with everything, this has to be openly said quite a lot.
Your affection for your charge has rendered you incapable of clear and impartial judgment. You have a father's love for the child.
He even has this ongoing sexual tension with Buffy's mother, of which there were already hints that there might be something there before the season 3 episode Banned Candy, where Giles' old frenemy Ethan starts selling candy bars that make all the adults in town start acting like teenagers, and Giles and Joyce end up having sex on the hood of a police car. It was just such a violent shift to see Giles going from this...
Smell is the most powerful trigger to the memory there is. A certain flower or a whiff of smoke can bring up experiences long forgotten.
...to this.
You're my Slayer. Go knock his teeth down his throat.
Giles!
Like with Willow, the difference between who Giles is in season 1 and who he is by season 4 is a chasm. He looks entirely different after he gets fired. He doesn't really wear those spiffy jackets anymore. Granted, yes, he is unemployed now, but there is this sense that the Watcher that he was in seasons 1 through 3 was a costume that he put on to distance himself from the punk kid that he was, because being that punk kid led to drama and death. By season 4, he doesn't feel the need to pretend to be this Watcher caricature anymore. He starts playing the guitar again more often, and he goes and sings at open mic nights.
No one knows what it's like to be the bad man.
Having this backstory of a lifetime of regret adds a lot more texture to Giles, and as such, he was always one of my favourite characters. And given I'm now closer to his age, I identify very much with his role of standing and exhaustedly rolling his eyes at whatever stupid thing Xander's come out with this time.
I cannot believe that you are fool enough to do something like this.
Oh no, I'm twice the fool it takes to do something like this.
His story arc in season 2 is easily one of the highlights of the early years. His love interest, computer science teacher Jenny, for starters gets possessed by the demon that he and his friends summoned in childhood. Then she gets revealed to only be in Sunnydale because she's supposed to watch Angel to make sure that he doesn't experience a moment of true happiness to break the curse that restored his soul. That unfortunately happens and he turns evil, and it causes more friction between them until they finally reconcile just before Angel kills her and leaves her body in Giles' bed for him to find. Yeah, saying all this out loud, Giles easily has the most emotionally distressing drama to deal with this season, even more so than Buffy. And Anthony Head just embodies this role. His performance sits at the perfect halfway house between being warm and caring and intense enough for you to know that you shouldn't fuck with him. Rest in peace.
And there's no one in the world who has the power to stop me now.
I'd like to test that theory.
Interesting fact, around the same time that Buffy was being developed, Anthony Head was cast as one of the main characters in one of my other favourite shows ever, British detective comedy drama Jonathan Creek. He plays a sleazy magician called Adam Klaus. His role was recast in the next series when Buffy took off.
Row C, seat 4. Oh, who is that?
Blonde, wavy hair.
Oh, I want to lie beside her in a bath of warm glue.
He clearly finds it hard to adjust after he's fired from being her watcher and doesn't have this official capacity designating his role as father figure anymore. He spends quite a lot of his post-firing period feeling rather pointless. Both he and Xander feel devalued while Buffy and Willow are off in higher education. He gets forced to harbour Spike when he's had this chip implanted that stops him from biting people, and they develop this domestic odd couple dynamic where he's always rolling his eyes at Spike's habits.
Come on now! It's telly time!
I really have to...
Passions is on! Timmy's down the bloody well, and if you make me miss it, I'll do what? Lick me to death?
I think my assertion that Buffy's got just as much in common with sitcoms as it does with teen drama goes into overdrive in Season 4. Things start evening out around Seasons 5 and 6, and he returns to his role as the primary figure of authority again, leaving mid-Season 6 to become more of a guest role, and being the key figure of diffusing tension at the end of Season 6, and teaching Willow how to deal with her magic in the aftermath at the start of Season 7. By that point, the viewers got respect for Giles. They've seen him disrespected and the shit he's been through, and he's come out the other side as the authority figure again, who you can't easily pigeonhole as just there to open the book and explain what the monster is this week. And speaking of those monsters, let's talk about how the show approaches those. Streaming shows tend to largely be serialized these days. If there's a season of a sci-fi, fantasy or horror show, chances are there's one big villain whose plans slowly come together over the course of the season, building towards the final showdown. Buffy is basically a prototype for that style that's written for a model that existed before streaming. Buffy was made back during the network TV era, where shows will be airing all year round to fill specific time slots in live broadcast schedules, and there's going to be functional differences in the writing based on the needs of the medium. The need for making 22 weeks of shows meant that you couldn't have every episode be about just the one thing, otherwise people would get bored pretty easily. And so a popular format for sci-fi, fantasy and horror shows at the time was the Monster of the Week, whereby individual episodes will be about the cast defeating one monster. Next week is a different monster. In Buffy, the wide variety of monsters, often with high concept ideas attached to them, meant that the tone and style of individual episodes could vary a lot more wildly than shows do these days under the binge-watching model, where a season of a show essentially acts like an 8-hour-long film that gets released once every few years. In Buffy, one week it could be about one of the characters getting the power to read minds. One week, one of the characters gets a wish granted by a demon that Buffy never came to Sunnydale, and we butterfly effect the world going to hell. But there's usually one villain designated as big enough for the final showdown, hanging in the background foreshadowing the season going out with a bang. And that big villain will often be the cause of various things that happen in these Monster of the Week stories, or they can just show up and cackle in the odd scene here and there. It's designed to be this ongoing story to keep you coming back for more, but not every episode is massively important, and you'll often get wind of news or there'll be foreshadowing that something major's going to happen, so you'll know when you need to tune in. If you missed this random, fairly crap episode where the swim team get turned into fish monsters, it won't really matter, you'll still be able to enjoy the finale. The final villains started getting referred to as big bads by the characters themselves.
It's the big bad, Dawn. The one we knew was coming.
The characters became aware of the format itself. This is outwardly metafiction, but it works in universe as well because in life, as in art, there is this formula that things tend towards. Sometimes shit's gonna happen in your life one thing after another. You lose a job, a loved one cheats on you or gets addicted to something, somebody dies and you'll be looking around for the screen somewhere begging for this to just be a TV show about your life. Please, it's not real, it's just formula. A big bad in your life will be an ex-partner, a colleague that you don't like very much, someone from your partner's social circle who doesn't get on with you, a family member who you don't like very much, your own burgeoning sense of existential dread. And people familiar with Buffy may have noticed that each one of those examples are either a Buffy big bad or linked to the series arcs in some way. Buffy had this habit of making one of the main characters into either the big bad, a component of the big bad, or something they do causes the big bad to be unleashed. In Season 1, the big bad is the Master, an ancient, incredibly powerful vampire who's trapped beneath the surface of Sunnydale in his dark lair of fog machines and creepy lighting. And he sends his emissaries out into Sunnydale to put things in place to get Buffy to come and fight him so he can kill her, feed on the blood of a slayer, and gain the power to free himself. As much as Mark Metcalf throws himself into it, the Master is your basic cackling villain for Buffy to fight. And once you've done bad guy wants to end the world / wreak havoc, if you're going to do that every year, it's going to get boring. But this finale introduces the seed of how the show would operate from here on out.
You're the one that sets me free. If you hadn't come,
I couldn't go.
So Buffy herself essentially plays a role as part of that big bad. And it's from here that the show builds its future big bads on their emotional connections with the characters, and the roles that those characters play in either setting up the big bad, or making situations concerning said big bad worse. In Season 2, the big bad appears to be Spike, a vampire with a history of having fought and killed 2 Slayers, who shows up in Sunnydale with his girlfriend Drusilla, who's unwell and needs a ritual performed to get her back to full strength. Once Drusilla's back to full strength, Spike is injured and spends the rest of the season in a wheelchair. Buffy and Angel have sex and he experiences the moment of true happiness and he loses his soul and turns evil, and it turns out he's the big bad, the ex-lover big bad that you might encounter in your own life.
Dream on, schoolgirl. Your boyfriend is dead.
Angel having this history with Buffy and her having essentially played a role in accidentally creating this big bad means emotions are running even higher when Angel plots to destroy the world. If Angel had just been turned evil again and tried to end the world, it wouldn't mean as much. The fact that he and Buffy were partners and she was party to the act that removed his soul in the first place is what's important. It makes things much more complex than if it were just a monster that wanted to destroy the world again. In Season 3, the big bad is Mayor Richard Wilkins III, who's got this fun, bouncy duality to him where he's this chipper local politician with a corny sense of humour.
My dear mother said, cleanliness is next to godliness, and I believed her. She never caught a cold.
But he's also a century old and was the founder of Sunnydale and is planning a ritual where he's going to turn into a massive demon snake monster who's going to destroy everything.
That's one spunky little girl you've raised. I'm gonna eat her.
Would be great on its own, but the complexity is increased with the introduction of Faith, the Slayer who was called after Kendra died. Faith takes on the role of the colleague that you don't like very much big bad. Faith has clearly had a very troubled life and developed this brash and arrogant personality where she acts purely on instinct. She's obviously emotionally unstable right from her introduction. In her first episode, Faith, Hope and Trick, she's shown up in Sunnydale acting cool, but the vampire that killed her watcher has come to town, and is an emotional sore spot for her for obvious reasons.
He killed her, didn't he?
You don't have a word for what he did to her.
Faith's parents only get mentioned once or twice, so it's likely that they weren't exactly supportive or around that much, so her watcher probably became a parental figure like Giles is to Buffy, so this death really affected her. And she's denying herself the emotions that are necessary to cope with the trauma. Like Buffy, Faith had to grow up fast when her watcher died, so when Buffy and everyone start showing concern about her reckless behaviour, she falls in with the Mayor, who becomes her surrogate father figure. The Mayor has the appearance of being a supportive, loving parent, but he's also encouraging the violent tendencies that Faith's discovered and been enjoying. The escalation of the emotional drama between Buffy and Angel and the Mayor and Faith is arguably way more interesting than the actual substance of the final Season 3 event, wherein the Mayor turns into a big snake monster. Wow, so you're a late 90s TV CGI quality snake monster. Well done. Yeah, I joked about this earlier, and I know that looking at this, modern audiences would either cringe or try and justify it with, at the time this was probably very impressive, and granted you've got to allow for the limitations of the budget constraints of TV. But my point is, however this looked, it's still an episode of a television show in which a man turns into a big snake monster. This was always incredibly stupid, but my point is, it doesn't end up feeling stupid. Graduation Day Part 2 has gone down as one of the show's best episodes because the writing around it, the relationships that have been built up between Buffy, Angel, Faith and the Mayor is so richly textured and so compelling that it doesn't really matter how stupid this scene looks on the face of it and when you say what's actually happening in it out loud. If you create this network of compelling character drama around an event as stupid as this, no one's going to care what it looks like. Ultimately though, like with the question of where do we go once we've done a cackling villain wants to destroy the world, and answered it with increase the complexity of the personal conflict running alongside it, you inevitably get to the question of where do you go once you've perfected that formula. Which is what Season 3 is. It is a completely perfect season of television and I won't accept any arguments to the contrary. You will find this massive stupid snake monster beautiful. Stare at it, look at it, find it beautiful.
And then the snake exploded, and then everyone had a snake barbecue, and the Angel was like, I can't have the snake barbecue, I've got to go to Los Angeles.
Season 4, while it has some of the strongest individual episodes of Buffy, is probably the weakest of the show as a whole. Yes, I will be fighting Season 7's corner later in the video. It kind of does an amalgamation of previous arcs and does the people in your new partner's social circle big bad. Buffy's new boyfriend Riley is part of the Initiative, this military unit in Sunnydale that captures and studies demons and vampires. Like Angel, he's Buffy's boyfriend and he's got a dark secret side to him that makes him dangerous. Like Faith, he's got a personal, almost surrogate parental relationship with Professor Walsh, a leading scientist at the Initiative who's working on Adam, a demon-human hybrid super soldier whose goal is creating an army of creatures like him. Walsh is a decent idea as a sort of inverse Giles, but there's very few scenes that establish why Riley was warm to her in the first place. She's not really that subtle. Almost every bit of dialogue and interaction she has with another character just sort of screams evil. That and the stern mother relationship dynamic that she has with Riley makes this scene, that you've probably forgotten about, feel about 27,000 times creepier than it already was. Yes, I know you blocked that out so you could continue to pretend that Buffy was a perfect show in all regards. I am very sorry. And I have to use the obvious meme here. Riley ultimately has to either betray Buffy or betray the Initiative and sacrifice his military career. It's effective enough, but a lot of it is quite samey. By the end of Season 4, they've got this formula figured out where the big bads need two key components intertwined, consisting of an emotional plot with one of their leads and a world-ending one with a monster. And Season 5 has one of the most daring and controversial mixtures of these two sides of Big Bad Monster wants to destroy the world. And in this case, it's the big bad family member that you don't get on with. Dawn is possibly the most maddeningly brilliant character in the history of television. I understand exactly why she was so controversial. Retconning a character into reality and rewriting fans' understanding of the show 5 seasons in sounds like an incredibly bad idea. But to deny the brilliance of this arc and basing assessments of it off of conventions, trends, and historical failures of similar incidents, I feel is missing the point. Because Dawn is noticeably a play on TV shows with a loose approach to their own canon. They do know what they're doing with her, and have applied a structure to her as a way of demonstrating that this is how you make what looks like a bad idea on the surface actually work. The self-awareness isn't what makes Dawn good though. I don't just like it because I have a thing for metafiction. It's the way they've written her story that I think is so genius. I remember it being pretty baffling back in the day watching a combination of Buffy reruns in its BBC Two block where they played seasons 6 and 7, and VHS tapes of seasons 1, 2 and 3 lent to me by a friend, where sometimes Buffy had a sister called Dawn, sometimes she's an only child. I felt like the show was gaslighting me. Wait, doesn't Buffy have a sister? No, she's always been an only child. Okay. Anyway, so this week, Buffy and her sister... Wait, I thought you said she was an only child. No, she's always had a sister. Are you sure you're remembering this right? You could see them laying the groundwork for a story like this in earlier reality rewrite episodes like Superstar, where occasional nerdy side character Jonathan magics the world so now he's a celebrity and everyone worships him, and apparently always have. And Buffy's the first one to question it.
Anya, when you were a demon, you granted wishes, right? But someone could wish the whole world to be different, right? And that's possible?
Sure. Alternate realities. You could even make like a freaky world where Jonathan's like some kind of not perfect mouth breather, if that's what's blowing up your skirt these days. Just don't ask me to live there.
So a season-long arc where something similar happens isn't exactly out of nowhere. At the end of the Season 5 premiere, Buffy randomly sees Dawn for the first time, and they both act like this is a regular occurrence.
Mom!
Following that, Dawn becomes the focal character for an episode and we explore her life, and we get it reinforced to us that she has always been here.
I don't know. I know it's always been this way. She's the baby.
But we know it hasn't always been this way. We were watching the show last year. Buffy finds out that Dawn was created because she is the human form of this key that the season's big bad Glory, a god who takes on the form of a Cordelia-esque woman with an annoying sense of humour, wants so that she can open a portal to her home hell dimension that will unleash chaos on Earth. We're told that Dawn is a character of convenience. She's been invented for the sake of this story. TV retconning happens all the time, and it's always controversial. The entire last season of Roseanne never happened. Bobby Ewing was killed off in Dallas, then a season later he's alive again somehow. An obvious parody of this trend was an episode that I mentioned earlier, Principal Skinner on The Simpsons. He's actually Armin Tamzarian, and the real Principal Skinner was missing in the war the whole time. And far from being just a parody, people took real offense to this. It always takes people out of the story because these characters no longer feel like real people experiencing their own lives. They're now puppets being maneuvered by the creatives to enact the stories that have been designed for them. However, Dawn is different because they haven't just created a character of convenience. She's not just the key, they've created a person here. A real girl with a history with all the characters, and who will presumably remain in the show after the arc's concluded. This becomes obvious in Season 5, Episode 5. Buffy does a spell to see if her mother's under some kind of magical attack because of her burgeoning health issues. She finds out she isn't, but the spell also reveals that Dawn isn't supposed to be here. Her initial instinct is to distrust her, treat her as another supernatural thing. But then she's told that Dawn doesn't know what she is, and she sees Dawn alone in her room, sad and worried because her mother's getting these early warning signs that something's wrong with her, and she doesn't know what's happening or why. And it's at this point that you realise that Dawn is more than just a plot device. She's a realistic character having an emotional reaction to her mother getting sick, something that anybody can relate to.
What's wrong with Mom? I don't know.
She also has a very realistic emotional reaction to finding out what she is. Imagine how it would feel to find out that your entire life was created in service of this stupid supernatural bullshit, and none of the memories that you have with all your friends and family are real, and you're actually only a couple of months old.
Gonna be late for school.
I'm not going. Blobs of energy don't need an education.
This is almost more traumatic than Buffy realising her Slayer destiny at the point that her parents divorce. And this is a 15-year-old girl having a completely psychologically breaking realisation. Dawn always got labelled as annoying by the fanbase. She got called the Scrappy Doo of Buffy, retroactively given to us when no one asked for her. Not helped, of course, by the regular occurrence of this.
Get out. Get out, get out, get out!
The reaction was quite similar to the one the show was deliberately trying to engender with the Watchers Council sending Wesley to be Buffy's new Watcher when Giles got fired. While Giles' role was the stuffy adult that got treated like shit, he was our stuffy adult that we were allowed to treat like shit. And when you try and replace him, especially with someone who'll insult him to his face, obviously it's not going to feel the same, and people are going to lash out. Same deal as when they try and give Buffy a little sister, and that little sister annoys our favourite characters, and often causes the week's plot to happen, either through incompetence or malice, usually incompetence. Dawn causing trouble half the time isn't really her fault because the story's got to be about something, but her culpability means she's bad and we hate her. As with Xander, I think the hate that Dawn got was more vibes than anything she actually did, but I think there is another level to the reaction to Dawn. I think it was a case where Dawn reflected the teenage experience that we all had watching her so accurately, and we just didn't like what we saw. Because being a teenager does sometimes feel like being some kind of monster created for an unknown purpose. Why am I here? Why does the world feel like this? Are my friends and family really who they say they are? What if they're talking about me behind my back? What are they saying about me? What if I'm the problem? And Dawn's way of acting out is annoying whininess, which is all that a genuine teenager is truly capable of. Buffy wasn't. She was special. She had superpowers. Dawn doesn't. She has a supernatural origin story like Buffy, but she is just a pathetic little teenager. Dawn was the show going, this is you. This is how you would actually react if you had this supernatural backstory foisted upon you. You're not like Buffy, you're not like Willow, who learns to be a capable witch. You're not even like Xander, who's learned how to be a responsible adult. You're just a kid. You feel wrong and like you don't fit in society, and this is what you look like.
I know you. I know what you are. You don't belong here.
And Michelle Trachtenberg, rest in peace, got this role so insanely right. The fact fans found her annoying was the entire point. There's a genuinely great episode in Season 6 that I didn't appreciate at the time because I was still of the opinion that Dawn was an annoying brat, called Older and Far Away. all the characters get inexplicably trapped inside the house, and something tells them that Dawn had something to do with it. It's a weird Kids Bop cover of the art house classic movie The Exterminating Angel. This is the episode where the gang find out Dawn's developed a kleptomania problem. I get why Dawn was acting out, because yeah, Buffy and Willow have been ignoring her because they've had their own shit to deal with, and that might not be their fault, but I understand why Dawn would react in a pathetic, desperate way that only a teenager lacking in power and agency could.
You haven't really been... What? I haven't been what? Around.
Dawn broke any semblance of power fantasy that Buffy might have been offering kids. But it kind of makes sense to do it because Buffy, Willow and Xander, while still vulnerable and emotional, are basically grown-ups now. And this is ultimately a show for kids to have their experiences reflected through monsters and the supernatural. So I understand why they reached the conclusion to add her. And Dawn's introduction also brings with it a new and interesting vulnerability for Buffy. While she might resent having to protect Dawn from the supernatural, she knows she has to. Not just because doing so is an extension of her saving the world, it's because she is her little sister now. And also, if they're killing off Joyce towards the end of the season, they will need some new family-related vulnerability for Buffy eventually. A lot of Buffy stories are about her feeling displaced and unappreciated, so giving Joyce the quote-unquote normal daughter that she always wanted gives Buffy something to resent.
Sometimes I would like to just curl up in Mom's lap and not worry about the fate of the world.
Buffy's emotional journey from resenting Dawn to discovering why she exists and having to square the fact that her little sister isn't meant to be here, but ultimately is human with real emotions and a history that feels real to her, is incredibly compelling drama. It fits with Buffy's raison d'etre incredibly well. If Dawn were just a character of convenience, we'd get to the end of this storyline and she'd become the key again and/or close the gate and die or vanish. But Buffy's reaction and response to finding out Dawn's reason for being makes that impossible. She is a Summers now.
It doesn't matter where you came from or how you got here. You are my sister.
And Dawn is one of the key reasons why that episode, you know, that one, the one that's about half the reason that Buffy is so respected today, works as well as it does. Seasons 4 through 6 are a slow process of Buffy's life falling apart and her having to pick up the pieces. And Willow and Xander also have arcs in that vein, continuing in the show's tradition of reflecting the experiences of young people through monsters. And this is the point where the show knows it needs to mature and get a lot darker. Because your early 20s are the point where the doors of the difficult, but rigorously structured playpen get opened. There's no barriers anymore, you're let out into the world, and while this might have been the freedom that you craved, adapting to it is never easy. At the start of season 4, Buffy goes off to college with Willow. While Willow is excited, Buffy is apprehensive.
Isn't this cool? There's so much going on.
Yeah. Almost one might say too much.
The season 4 opener, The Freshman, is probably the most accurate episode of a TV show or movie depicting what college life is actually like that I've ever seen. I remember in my last year of school, we had a student representative of a university come and give us a lecture about the wonders of higher education and campus living, which lined up with most of the shows and movies that I'd watched where college life was either depicted as fun hijinks or an experience to be wistful and romantic about in later years. I listened to that lecture and I thought to myself, yeah, I'm gonna go to university and be a completely different person. Then when I actually got there, I realised that I was still the same person that I was several hundred miles away and had a complete emotional breakdown. I didn't appreciate The Freshman when I first saw it when I was a kid because it clashed so violently with what the rest of culture was telling me higher education would be like. Turns out this episode got it exactly right. Buffy has the same experience that I ended up having at university. Things aren't different, she's still the Slayer, and she finds that now she doesn't have adults in her life like Giles pointing her at a thing to kill, she's more lost than ever.
And Eddie's RA said kids disappear a lot. There could be a gang of vampires working the campus.
I still don't see where I fit in. You haven't described anything that you can't do yourself. You are going to have to take care of yourself. You're out of school, and I can't always be there to guide you.
Well, yeah. Of course Buffy went and asked him for guidance. You don't change immediately because a day has passed and you're technically speaking a grown-up now. People don't come preloaded with all this knowledge of how to navigate life, so naturally she's going to make mistakes, like when she assumes a guy that's shown interest in her is doing so for more than just sex. She ends up dating Riley, a seemingly solid guy from Iowa working as a teacher's assistant, but he turns out to be leading a similar double life that she has as a soldier for the Initiative. And come on show, do your heavy-handed dramatic irony.
What kind of girl is gonna go out with the guy who's acting all Joe regular by day and then turns all demon hunter by night?
The opening of Season 4 is a great reflection of the lessons that you learn when you go from a dopey little 19-year-old going out into the world thinking, people are nice and I can trust them, dum-de-dum-de-dum, to realising that you can't and there's all this history to them and they're capable of things that you couldn't possibly have imagined. While Riley does prove to Buffy that he can be trusted by rebelling against the Initiative and ruining his military career, what happens after that? It's a beautiful romantic story of Buffy meeting a guy who's compromised by being in with a bad crowd. But he can't just be broken away from that bad crowd, save the day, kiss the girl and everything's fine, can he? That's how stories typically work, yes, but where do you go from there? Good guy or not, Riley needs to find direction in his life, because when he doesn't have that direction, he's gonna go insane. Riley may have been raised right, but he's been raised to be part of something bigger than himself, a cog in a machine. Turns out the machine he was in was evil and was conducting experiments on him, and obviously he's got trauma off the back of that. In the following season, we see Riley as the cog that's been taken out of the machine. While bored and restless, Riley starts going off to a brothel-like establishment where humans pay to have vampires feed on them but not kill them. Riley is one of the most disliked characters in Buffy, partly because this storyline is typically presented by people as a simple case of cheating.
Fine. Fine. Tell me about your whores. Tell me what on earth they were giving you that I can't.
Personally though, I think there's a dimension to this that everyone's missing, and that's the fact that Riley is clearly extremely depressed throughout Season 5, because he's living a life that's wrong for him. And depression causes people to self-destruct and do stupid things like this. Sure, sometimes people use depression as an excuse for cheating, but I don't think that's what Riley's doing here. While his actions in this storyline are presented in a sexual way, what is he literally doing here? He's paying somebody to hurt him.
They made me feel something, Buffy. Something I didn't even know I was missing until...
I can't.
In the episode Out of My Mind, Riley's health deteriorates because of what the Initiative did to him that makes him capable of fighting vampires. He rejects Doctor's attempts to intervene because without the superpowers, he doesn't measure up to Buffy.
Best case scenario, they turn me into Joe Normal. Just another guy. Come on, your last boyfriend wasn't exactly a civilian.
So yes, part of what happens with him is a crisis of masculinity, and I understand why he'd have it. But his breakdown over the first half of Season 5 isn't just a case of male insecurity at having to accept that he isn't as strong as his girlfriend. It's because Riley broke out of a life that sure was bad for him, but it at least resembled a life that he was suited to. A soldier who's respected by his peers and his superiors. Not having that kind of structure to his life where he's just another human in the orbit of the Slayer is the problem. You can't force people to live lives that they're not suited to. And yes, the way he handles this existential crisis is bad, but I understand where these self-destructive tendencies came from. And he eventually does the right thing and he leaves, and while his leaving might suck, I don't think you can blame him for it. It's not her fault that he left, it was what he needed. And this gets proven when he shows up the following year in Season 6, now competent, a respected soldier who's married and thriving incredibly quickly.
I've been up for 48 hours straight, tracking something bad. Now it's come to Sunnydale.
My hat has a cow.
So by the middle of Season 5, Buffy's alone, and there's an apocalypse just around the corner, again. Dawn finds out that she's the key and has a breakdown. The doctors discover that her mother has a tumour. Joyce has an operation and seemingly recovers, and things seem to start evening out. We even have a simple, fun, breezy and light-hearted episode about a guy who's built a robot that's programmed to love him. That's funny and stupid, right? Just like the old days.
Hi, I'm looking for Warren. Do you know where Warren is? And if you do, could you tell me?
Well, that's the exact moment when this happens. On one level, The Body is a very special episode. A term you're probably all familiar with and are likely going to raise an eyebrow when I refer to what's often recognised as one of the finest hours of television by that term. So we're going to have to go through some notable examples to prove why The Body is a very special episode, but not in the way that you'd think. The very special episode is an episode of a drama or a comedy about a hard-hitting real-world topic with some kind of purpose intended to benefit the viewers. The ones people would always think of when they hear that term are about the dangers of drug use.
What's up, Doc, is your life, if you don't cut it out.
There's nothing cool about a fool on drugs.
But a very special episode can be about any topic to demonstrate morality or coping mechanisms to what is usually an audience of children who will need to know about this stuff sooner or later. So what you do is you introduce these topics to them in a cuddly kids show environment. Buffy did very special episodes all the time. It was designed to speak to teenagers' experiences and enforce its fluffy and friendly worldviews of love and friendship and the various issues encountered in the process of seeking that love and supporting those friends. But it also did morality. And morality tales are usually people's least favourite examples of the very special episode. The one that you all know that I'm referring to is Beer Bad, an episode from season 4 where a bartender who's sick of pretentious college students treating him like shit serves them a magic beer that turns them into cavemen.
I mean, they're always coming in here with their snotty attitudes, thinking they're different than us.
They are now.
They ain't. That's the great thing about beer. It makes all men the same.
The message being, don't drink beer or it'll make you stupid.
Fire angry!
Yes, I am bringing up Beer Bad in a section about The Body, because I want Buffy fans to start having a complete breakdown when they realise that yes, I am right. They are both in the same category. Deal with it. The best type of the very special episode in basically any show, not just Buffy, has always been about how to handle your emotions after a tragedy. The episode of the sitcom 8 Simple Rules, where the cast deal with the real-life death of the actor that played the family patriarch, John Ritter, is a great example of a very special episode about a sensitive topic related to people's emotions. A studio sitcom with a laugh track is suddenly quiet and about the characters dealing with the death of someone very close to them.
You know, the last time we were in here together, he accused me of hiding his socks. No kissing. Just where'd you hide my socks, Kate?
It's there to teach you how to handle a real-world topic, by showing you how fictional characters would react to it. You just might be quick to dismiss any episode openly labelled as such because you associate the concept of the very special episode with a TV show wagging its finger at you and going, drugs are bad, okay? As much as people might roll their eyes at the concept of the very special episode, tackling hard-hitting topics is important in children's media. If you introduce the concept of death to a child in a simulation provided by a work of fiction, they get to experience the emotions associated with the death of a loved one without actually having to go through that yet. And so they have some frame of reference for the point where they actually have to experience it. Things like Mufasa's death in The Lion King have a huge impact on kids because they care about the characters. But there's also inevitability to death in particular. Mufasa doesn't come back to life, there's nothing Simba can do but deal with his emotions. That's what you're going to have to do someday, and this is how he does it, and you can learn from that experience. The Body is a very special episode in that vein, and it's good for kids and adults who are yet to deal with the heaviest of real-world topics relevant to everyone, the death of a parent. The supernatural elements are incredibly limited in The Body. There's no music, a couple of very minor references to the ongoing plot of the series. It's so wildly different to any other episode of Buffy. It's a completely jarring moment where a fun fantasy show for teenagers just stops dead in its tracks for the heaviest of heavy detours. And the reason it stands out from the typical very special episode is because it's done in such a shockingly realistic way. The Body is dedicated throughout its runtime to emotionally pummeling the viewer and trying to put you in Buffy's shoes, either flashing back to the death of one of your parents or both, or imagining how you're going to react when you eventually have to deal with that scenario. A point people usually skip over with The Body isn't just the lack of music, but the sound design. The sound mix is incredibly strange. Some sounds like the scissors cutting Joyce's clothes off at the start of the autopsy are so loud, and yet footsteps are so quiet. Some sounds you'd think should be there, like this guy putting on his coat, are missing entirely. The Body is just screaming at you throughout every second of its runtime that this is not normal. Usually when a character dies in a TV show, someone discovers their body, then there's a smash cut to the authorities arriving. In The Body, Buffy walks in and finds Joyce's body. We cut to the opening titles, then there's a little light-hearted scene of everything as normal. But then we cut directly back to Buffy, and we stay and watch what happens next. TV shows and movies don't typically do this when someone dies. We watch a full-on demonstration of what actually happens when someone finds the dead body of a loved one.
Mom, 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 Mom!
Dawn is also utterly vital to making this work as well as it does. Fans may have complained about Dawn at first, but this episode is where you see why she was so necessary. If Buffy were still an only child, it would still hit hard and be meaningful, but it wouldn't be nearly as effective. The scene of her interrupting Dawn's art class and trying to take her outside to explain what happened and then treading delicately around her over the rest of the episode is key to getting this working. Buffy's had her vulnerable human moment of discovering the body, now she has to be the strong one and explain what happened and care for her sister, while still trying to process it herself.
Can it wait? I'm in the middle of class.
Anna, please come with me.
If you've never seen it, there's really not much more I can add. The body is just a work of art that you have to experience at one point in your life. It's not necessarily enjoyable. I didn't actually like it that much when I first saw it when I was a kid because it just made me feel uncomfortable. The groundwork for it was there though. The show explored things like PTSD, depression and self-hatred really well before, but it usually did those things through metaphor. In Season 4, there's a 2-part episode where Faith wakes up from a coma that Buffy put her in at the end of Season 3 and discovers that the Ascension was stopped, and that Buffy killed her surrogate father figure, the Mayor. Faith's lost, directionless, and it looks like everything's over for her, and she's trying to square all the bad decisions she made that led her here. Over the course of the story, Faith reflects on what she became, and the plot revolves around her switching bodies with Buffy. Mostly so the story can end on Faith literally punching herself in the face and screaming this.
Disgusting! Murderous bitch, you're nothing!
Yeah, again, Buffy is incredibly heavy-handed. Great, but heavy-handed. But there's nothing in the body that translates the experience into fantasy. There's no metaphors here. Buffy's mother died of a brain aneurysm. That is her dead body. It's completely raw and it's hard to watch, but its power is undeniable. Buffy's recovery from the death of her mother in the following episodes appears to happen relatively quickly because it has to. She's got a god to fight and a little sister to protect. As with her parents' divorce, Buffy's never allowed the time to truly rest and reflect on her emotional reaction to the things that happen. And before you know it, she's dead at the end of the gift. So Buffy never has time to truly reflect on her mother's death and what her absence means. Which is why Season 6 ends up being so depressing. She has an emotional breakdown in the episode immediately following the body as Dawn confronts her over her emotional distance, and Buffy openly admits that things are going to be so much harder from now on.
Nobody's asking you to be mom.
Well, who's gonna be if I'm not? Who's gonna make things better? Who's gonna take care of us?
As the Slayer, she's competent and she can save her friends from mortal peril, but the basic running of a home is a lot for a 20-year-old whose father is AWOL. So what Buffy's death at the end of the season represents is essentially her sacrificing any kind of future for herself for the sake of her friends and her family. Buffy's death itself is temporary, but its appearance of finality is the point. What happens at the end of Season 5 is essentially Buffy's child self dies. She can no longer have the rigorous structure of a childhood where everything's organised by somebody else. She can't even have the vague outlines of that structure of childhood that's offered by college. She's well and truly out on her own now and has to keep a roof over her head and care for her little sister. This moment where she suddenly realises now she has to be the grown-up would be traumatic enough without the fantasy elements. It's a sudden, shocking, brutal transformation of Buffy's place in the world. Even more of a violent shift than when she went off to college. And obviously she has trouble coping. Which leads me on to this. Spike has probably got the strangest arc in Buffy. He starts around the beginning of Season 2 as the apparent big bad. He has a history similar to Angel of being this impressive deadly vampire, even more impressive given he fought and killed 2 Slayers. He wears a long leather coat, has bleached hair and he looks cool, but around the middle of that season where he gets injured and spends the rest of it in a wheelchair being insulted by the now soulless Angel, he starts to mutate into comic relief and that's where he stays for quite a while. There is a stark contrast between how the show treats Spike when he first shows up in Season 2 and the one episode where he returns in Season 3. While Spike is still dangerous in Lover's Walk, he still kills the shopkeeper and threatens to kill people, but by that point, the creative team have clearly discovered just how good James Masters is as the pathetic drunken lowlife. The way they figure out how to make it so his core function in the show is comedic is they essentially have to defang him. He gets a chip put in his head by the Initiative that means he can't bite or even hit humans without severe pain. And there's lots of incredibly heavy-handed innuendo where a vampire who can't bite people is basically treated like a guy experiencing erectile dysfunction.
This sort of thing's never happened to me before.
Maybe you were nervous.
I felt all right when I started.
Yeah, thanks, I get it. Again, Buffy is the opposite of subtle. So he is still evil. He's not this tortured, mopey soul like Angel. He's still bitter, sarcastic and funny, but he's also pretty much harmless now.
I mean, am I even remotely scary anymore? Tell me the truth.
Masters is so good in this role that it's quite easy to forget that he was ever meant to be a big bad. It almost doesn't matter that Spike has a legacy of evil and killed 2 Slayers and would be incredibly dangerous if he ever got fixed. He gets even more pathetic when he falls in love with Buffy in season 5 and he's pining after her and gets a sex robot made that looks exactly like her.
Spike? Oh, Spike.
Yeah, I did mention this show's really dumb sometimes and we all take it far too seriously. I have mentioned that, right? We've had it hammered to us throughout the show that vampires aren't really people, they're things. They don't have souls and that's why they're evil. And yet despite being evil, the fact Spike is now incapable of harm means he slowly starts becoming more benevolent towards everyone. He does occasional favours for Buffy for cash, but the more time he spends around her mother, Dawn and Buffy herself, he starts showing genuine compassion for her. She's thrown him into a rage in this episode and he's decided he's had it. He's finally gonna go and kill her.
It'll hurt like hell for about 2 hours. And she'll be dead just a little longer than that.
But then he sees her crying because she's worried about her mother and he softens.
What's wrong?
I don't want to talk about it.
But why did he do that? He doesn't have a soul, right? It's dealing with the old nature versus nurture argument. Is it in Spike's nature to do bad things because he's a vampire, supposedly a demon inhabiting his body? But if so, he's been nurtured to become good by the chip in his head that causes pain whenever he commits an act of violence against a human.
Angel's different. He has a soul. Spike has a chip. Same diff.
Dawn is right there. It is the same diff. As much as Buffy continues to deny that it's possible for a creature with no soul to experience love, vampires are clearly capable of love. Spike's love for Drusilla was proven in season 2 when he works with Buffy so he can get Drusilla back. Now Spike's harmless. Still supposedly evil, but harmless, and his desire for Buffy is framed as a form of sexual aggression. And this gets linked up with his history with Slayers in a gorgeous flashback episode called Fool for Love. Spike's famous for having killed 2 Slayers, and Buffy wants to know how so she can learn from their mistakes. It's a great Spike is a worthless rat story, where he's now this pathetic drunken lowlife sitting in a bar with Buffy talking about his past glories, which Buffy doesn't even find all that impressive. And his stories are actually quite pathetic in spite of the fact that killing a Slayer, let alone 2, is an impressive achievement. When he got recruited as part of Angel, Darla and Drusilla's gang, he cast off his privileged mummy's boy upbringing and became obsessed with the idea of Slayers, one girl granted supernatural strength destined to kill vampires. And it's made pretty obvious that he's mentally substituting this interchangeable girl destined to kill him for his love interest from when he was mortal, Cecily. Cecily was a woman that he wrote poetry about and confessed his affection for, before she rejected him in the harshest of terms.
You're nothing to me, William. You're beneath me.
Spike lashing out at Slayers destined to kill him is him trying to regain the balance of power in his relationship, or lack thereof, with this girl that he was in love with. It's not really Buffy that he falls in love with in season 5, he's repeating an obsessive pattern. Add the chip in his head so he can't kill her, the longing for Buffy becomes purely sexual rather than violent, as it was with those 2 Slayers.
You're beneath me.
So there is this basis for what they do with Spike in Season 6, where his sexuality, and Buffy's submission to it, becomes an extension of the general malaise that acts as the big bad of Season 6. Spike discovers that he can hurt Buffy now because since she died, the pain chip doesn't recognise her as mortal. But by this point, he's been conditioned by the chip to be unwilling to kill her. But the aggressively sexual relationship that ensues grants him a form of power over her. So therefore, he wins. In terms of formula, the big bad of Season 6 appears to be the trio of nerd characters Jonathan, Warren and Andrew. But they're obviously not the big bad, are they? They're just a bunch of losers, mostly from previous episodes having a supervillain power fantasy. They are a component that constitutes the big bad, they do set events in motion, and Warren is responsible for the bad thing that triggers the series finale. But the thing most people remember about Season 6 is the Buffy-Spike relationship, and that's where most of the drama is. The big bad of Season 6 is Buffy's depression and sense of hopelessness, not helped by her friends who brought her back to life without thinking about what life means. Everyone just assumes that when she died, she went to hell, and being brought back into the world is better than hell. Spike's the first person Buffy confesses to that she was somewhere else. Spike's undead, so he's the only person that she feels comfortable talking to because he understands what it's like being brought back to life.
Well, I haven't been to a hell dimension just of late, but I do know a thing or two about torment.
I was happy. Wherever I was. I was happy.
There is so much drama in Buffy's wrestling with the fact that she was torn out of heaven, but key to it is the fact that she's got all these responsibilities now that she didn't ask for, and for which she's unprepared. She's got to keep a roof over their heads, pay the bills, get a job, hold it down, take care of Dawn, emotionally support her friends who don't understand what they've put her through. She insincerely thanks them all for bringing her back and lies that she was in hell because that's what they need to hear, not what she needs to say. I think the key line to Buffy's arc in Season 6 is this one.
And I was finished. Complete.
So what Buffy does in Season 6 is look for anything that might make her feel in some way satisfied. In the previous season, during the Spike has built a Buffy robot to have sex with story, she sees the robot version of herself, a spitting image of her, so happy. So that's what I would look like if I was happy. What makes her happy? Spike. So simple.
You're right. He's evil. But you should see him naked. I mean, really.
She started to soften to Spike in this scene where after Spike's been kidnapped by Glory and they've rescued him, she wants to know if he told Glory that Dawn is the key. So she pretends to be the Buffy bot to get information out of him.
Why did you let that Glory hurt you?
She wanted to know who the key was.
Oh, well, I can tell her and then you won't
No! Glory never finds out.
Why?
The other. Not so pleasant, Buffy. Anything happened to Dawn, you destroy her.
While I'm here, I just love that Sarah Michelle Gellar plays the Buffy bot differently to how she plays Buffy pretending to be the Buffy bot. There's some serious layers to her performance in this scene. The area that Season 6 kind of falls down is in trying to frame the Spike-Buffy relationship as a case of who's really the bad guy here. Buffy ends up feeling like she's using Spike because being with Spike is easy and a way of escaping her role as the functional adult in the lives of her sister and her recovering addict best friend.
You're going through a really hard time and you're...
What? Using him? What's okay about that? I'm just being weak and selfish.
Really not complaining here.
And it's killing me.
And yes, it is true that Buffy doesn't exactly come across well in this season. She does still treat Spike like dirt. In this episode, Dead Things, the trio has made Buffy think that she's killed a human being. Spike tries to stop her from going to the police to confess, and she mercilessly beats the shit out of him in response.
You don't have a soul. There is nothing good or clean in you.
Like, remove the supernatural context here. Imagine Buffy and Spike were just a normal human couple. This scene is incredibly messed up. However, when I saw this as a kid, I didn't really see it as a question of who's the real bad guy here. Having the full picture of Buffy's life melting down, the trauma associated with being brought back from the dead when she didn't ask for it, You don't really see Spike as anything other than a guy who's taking advantage of someone who's struggling to process their grief over a lost parent. It's made more obvious that that's what's really going on here by the fact that Giles, the surrogate father figure, goes back to England around the time that this sort of not really relationship starts.
But when I kissed you, you know I was thinking about Giles, right? He left. I was depressed, ergo vulnerability and bad kissing decisions.
The show ends up reaching the conclusion that while the chip conditioned Spike to do good, he is still evil near the end of the season in the episode Seeing Red, in a scene which I'm just going to pause here and not show you anything from, because it's incredibly upsetting and probably a huge mistake. And warning, we're going to be discussing sexual assault. If that's not something that you want to listen to me talk about, here's the timecode to skip to. So, in case you're unaware, Spike tries to force himself on Buffy. She stops him. And that causes him to reevaluate what he is and go on a journey to the other side of the world where he gets his soul restored. Okay, I see how they reached the conclusion to put this big dramatic incident in there to cause him to go away. And it kind of does work to address the issue that people also develop with Angel, whereby you don't see a relationship that the show is ultimately not endorsing as a non-endorsement. People find doomed love stories so hot that they don't take the lessons about why a relationship like this is a bad thing as actual lessons. Granted, show for teenagers, featuring young attractive people doing it, you've kind of created your own problem there. But I see how they arrived at the conclusion that Spike has to do something to underline to everyone that this isn't what relationships are supposed to look like. This isn't even a relationship. These people are bad for each other. However, I heavily agree with James Masters' issue with the scene, which he talked about on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast, link in the description. He explains precisely why this scene shouldn't be in there.
Since Buffy could defend herself very, very easily from this, they thought that they could have a man do it to a woman. Guys, we're providing a vicarious experience for the audience. That's storytelling in general. We tempt the audience behind the eyes of the lead. So I was saying, everyone who's watching Buffy is Buffy, and they're not superheroes. So I'm doing this to every member of the audience, and they're going to have a very different reaction.
Well, yeah. The violence between partners in this show, like Buffy beating the shit out of Spike, it doesn't feel real because these characters have superpowers. The emotional investment we have in it is based on our understanding of the characters, and the way this universe works means that you can get away with the violence. It's not literal violence. Okay, yes, it looks like it, but it has been filtered through metaphor. The body feels so real because the supernatural stuff is gone. And its status as a useful episode is intact, because this is how you're going to react to a situation like the death of a parent. Whereas in this scene, Buffy has super strength. Buffy can stop Spike, and so she does. But in the real world, that's a lot less likely. I'm also really not comfortable with the way the show moves on from it afterwards. It doesn't quite try and sweep it under the rug, they do address it. But there is this sense of the creative team panicking and desperately trying to move on from it quickly, hoping that they haven't ruined one of their most popular characters. His re-ensoulment and madness at the start of Season 7 is treated as punishment for what he does, but the problem there is that he then becomes, like Angel, a sick little puppy for Buffy to fix using love, when that's not her responsibility. He's the one that did something awful. She shouldn't have to make him feel better about it. It sends the completely wrong message, in my opinion. And since we're on Seeing Red, let's talk about the other massive controversy in that episode. When you talk about Tara, you obviously have to start out with how it was incredibly rare for there to be a realistic, positive depiction of a lesbian relationship on TV in the early 2000s. Even if they apparently weren't allowed to actually show them do something so simple as kiss on screen until this scene in the body.
Can't do this.
The Tara-Willow relationship is pretty tame when you watch it now, and has obviously been hindered by the homophobia of the time. Willow's process of realising that she's gay isn't really much of an on-screen presence. She just sort of meets Tara in the middle of Season 4 when she goes to a campus witch group and starts meeting up with her on a regular basis, wherein the show has to be giving knowing looks at the audience and going, "You understand what's going on here, right?" Willow is nervous about introducing Tara to Buffy and the gang, not because Tara is her new friend. You get what these scenes of her going to visit Tara in her room and doing spells together are supposed to represent, right? As tame as it is, I think Season 4 pulls off the beginnings of Tara and Willow's relationship. These are two women who've fallen in love with each other and have this deeply spiritual connection that transcends anything physical that we can actually show you. The end of New Moon Rising, where Willow returns to Tara after finally ending things amicably with Oz, is one of the most romantic scenes that I've ever seen on television.
Tara, I have to tell you. No, I understand. You have to be with the person you loved.
I am. Okay?
Oh, yes.
As with every character, Buffy is just so intense with the way it presents its emotions. It's not just going, here are some people, and they have some sex, and they love each other, I guess. No, it's going, this is the most important and beautiful love story that you will ever experience in your life. That being said, Tara is a relatively simple character in that she's nice. She stutters when she gets nervous, she avoids eye contact unless she really trusts you. One of my favourite scenes with her is when she goes to comfort Dawn when the gang find a dead body in a shop.
Do you want a thumb wrestle?
Okay.
The moment everyone always talks about with her that basically defines Tara as a character is the episode where Buffy and Faith switch bodies, and Tara's the first one to twig that something's up, despite never having met Buffy before.
A person's energy has a flow, a unity. Buffy's was... It grated, like something forced in where it doesn't belong. Plus, she's kind of mean.
She knows that Willow would never be friends with someone who's mean, so that's how she gets that something's wrong. Tara is just so sweet and wholesome in every way that despite being one of my favourite characters, it's hard to say as much about who she is as the others as opposed to what happens to her. This gets brought up in her only focal episode in Season 5, Family. When struggling to think of what to get her for her birthday, Buffy and Xander both realise that her being nice is pretty much the only thing that they know about her.
I mean, I don't really know her that well.
I know.
I mean, she's nice.
Yeah, nice.
Family is easily one of the all-time greats because it's such a perfect example of being simple but effective. Tara's family were abusive, coercive, and gaslit her into believing that all the women in their family turn into demons as adults, an old wives' tale meant to keep them in line. And it's one of very few cases where Tara does something dodgy to get what she wants. She casts a spell to mask whatever demon she's meant to become. But that accidentally makes all demons invisible, and that puts everyone in danger. You understand why she did it though, and her cowed reaction makes sense based on her upbringing.
I'm very sorry.
The camper's outside.
Wait, she just did a spell that went wrong.
It's not the point, and it's not your concern.
And so we get to have a moment of emotional firepower where Buffy asserts that they are her real family now because they wouldn't treat her like that.
You want to take Tara out of here against her will? You gotta come through me.
And me?
So it does add depth to Tara in the same way Buffy, Willow, Xander and Giles' depth have been woven throughout the show. But it's a shame it's the only episode that Tara gets where she is the main character. Outside of this, she never really gets treated as one. While I love Tara, she is treated for pretty much her entire time on the show as an extension of Willow rather than a person in her own right. Her niceness and wholesomeness is turned up to 11 the entire time, so that she can be this warm, soothing, loving blanket for when things get too heavy, or to present challenges to their relationship for Willow to overcome, including but not limited to her death, which is now unfortunately seen as her key moment, when I personally think it should be that ending of New Moon Rising. I am a soppy bugger and that one gets me every time. She gets her mind eaten by Glory just after she and Willow have had their first big fight, and so Willow now has to take care of her while she's unstable, in scenes that don't just tug at your heartstrings but yank on them with a massive pair of pliers.
Willow, it's okay. Buffy, could I have that? Here you go.
And then of course she leaves Willow because she uses magic that messes with her memories, which sets up Willow's arc in Season 6 where she quits the magic, goes cold turkey, and is basically a recovering drug addict. Again, outside of family, Tara is treated as emotional collateral for Willow so that her arcs can hit as hard as they need to, which really isn't the best way of treating one half of vanishingly few positive gay relationships that were on TV in the early 2000s. But at least it is a positive one. I feel people tend to forget just how homophobic the 2000s were, so for its time, their relationship was a very positive step in the right direction. Having a prominent gay couple at all in an incredibly popular cult fantasy show for nerds, with someone as incredibly and instantly lovable as Tara, was important in itself. Although this is why it's such a shame that a discussion about Tara inevitably has to lead to a discussion about the bury your gays trope, of which it is debatable that Tara is an example. It's not quite as clear-cut as it might appear. If you're familiar with the term bury your gays, it refers to the tendency of gay characters to usually die first in a story consisting mostly of straight characters. In researching the term, I ended up reading this article which suggests the reason that the trope emerged in the first place was it was a way for gay writers to write gay characters while presenting homosexuality as having consequences for a largely homophobic society. Which makes sense, you do write what you know, and if the only way to write what you know is to conform to the shitty standards that you're living with, then that's what you're gonna do. But tragic deaths among gay characters have persisted quite aggressively, even now that the message of a tragic gay love story is not to be a morality tale anymore. The homophobic purpose may largely be gone, but the vague framework of the original trope is still visible. I mean, sure, it can theoretically be a good thing to have a gay couple and present them as positively as possible and get your audience invested in them, so that when one gets killed off and one of them gets sad, the straight person with homophobic tendencies watching may feel something and realise, oh, they are just like me, aren't they? But the problem is that's a lesson for the straight person. It's not a story for the gay audience. And Buffy did have a large gay audience, and Willow and Tara's relationship was so meaningful for those young people who were in the process of discovering that they weren't straight, or had realised by that point, and were given representation, characters to feel an affinity with, only for them to have to go through the most horrible thing that a human can go through most of the time.
Your shirt.
Heterosexual romances on TV, while they can end tragically and can be done like that to teach the audience a lesson, example earlier in this video being Angel and Buffy themselves. But the fact gay relationships in TV and movies tend towards a premature death is a problem. And yes, you can absolutely make that criticism of the story of Tara and Willow. And trying to balance that out with, well, Giles' relationship with Jenny ended with her death as well, kinda misses the point. The history of this trope makes it a bigger issue than can be countered with either a single example or even a handful of examples. The reason this is such a difficult conversation when it comes to Tara and Willow, though, is that they'd arguably built the entire structure of the show by this point in such a way that Tara's death is basically inevitable from the moment of her introduction. As I said earlier, Willow indulging in magic made sense because magic gave her the agency that her parents denied her. But there has to be consequences for that magic, because if it was so easy to do, then why wouldn't you use magic for everything? Someone dies, magic them back to life. Need money, snap your fingers and you've got it. So we get storylines about the drawbacks of certain spells, but Willow can't give it up entirely because it's a part of who she is now. The spells get bigger and more impressive. She takes on a god as revenge for what that god did to Tara. Buffy, her best friend and protector of the group, dies, and obviously she's going to want to bring her back to life because she loves her. And of course we can't have a show called Buffy the Vampire Slayer if it doesn't have Buffy in it. The episode directly after Willow resurrects Buffy, Spike is angry that they didn't tell him that they were going to try and do it, and he says this.
It's the thing about magic. There's always consequences. Always!
Well, yeah, he's right, isn't he? As I said earlier, Buffy's death was necessary as part of the allegorical framework, and Willow was always going to be the one to resurrect Buffy. She'd been on this journey of developing her magical powers. It wouldn't work or be anywhere near as meaningful if it was just a random storyline with another magical character that showed up in Sunnydale to resurrect Buffy for her. Granted, there are consequences directly linked to this spell. There's a demon that gets created as a byproduct of the spell for an episode to be about, and Buffy's emotional turmoil throughout Season 6 is essentially the main price to pay. It's implied in Season 7 that the resurrection of Buffy triggered the first to go after the Slayer line. These are all consequences for the resurrection of Buffy, but they're generalised. They're not specifically targeted at Willow, who's the one that did it. And sure, Willow's resurrection of Buffy causes her to get too big for her boots, and her overuse of magic in the aftermath causes her and Tara to break up. There are plenty of consequences for Willow to face for the resurrection of Buffy, but if she's done something this huge, it's got to get bigger. She's brought the main character back to life. And importantly, what's going to cause her use of magic to get bigger and more dangerous? What's bigger than the death of her best friend? The hints at her darker side and her darker impulses come out throughout the show. Buffy, Xander, Giles and Tara all show concern over her use of magic, and her dismissal of their concerns start out as indignation, but end up incredibly aggressive.
A spell? I don't think it's wise for you to be doing that alone right now. Your energy's too unfocused.
Well, that's not true. I said I was off, not incompetent.
Willow, you are using too much magic. What do you want me to do? Just sit back and keep my mouth shut?
Well, that'd be a good start.
Control is key to Willow's story. She gained control of her life via magic and became convinced that she could do anything. I think it's an interesting point that Willow never actually grieved Buffy when she died because she was convinced that she would bring her back. It only sinks into her that Buffy's gone after it looks like the spell to bring her back didn't work.
Buffy's gone. She's really gone.
Then when it turns out it did work and she did bring Buffy back to life, instead of everything being fixed and happy and sunshine and cuddles, she gets a morose, somber Buffy who doesn't know how to adjust to it.
Wouldn't you think she'd be so happy that we brought her out? You thought she'd say thanks.
Willow can't fix everything with magic, so she lashes out at everybody. It must be everyone else that's the problem, right? It can't be that there's something wrong with me now. I fixed myself. I've transformed myself from the nerd that I was in high school into this awesome badass witch. Willow has some deep-seated self-hatred inside of her that she's dealing with in all the wrong ways, and there's got to be some conclusion for this trend in the storytelling. They'd been building this for years before the introduction of Tara, so it makes sense to turn her into this maddened witch who wants to destroy the world, and the way to do that is to hit her where it hurts the most, Tara. The only way to create the ultimate final boss of Season 6 and conclude Willow's magical indulgence arc is to create a Willow who suffered the cruelest tragedy imaginable.
Let me tell you something about Willow. She's a loser. The only thing I had going for me were the moments Tara would look at me and I was wonderful.
So... yeah, that's why it's so complicated to call Tara's death an example of the bury your gaze trope, because looking at the context of it, every creative decision is woven tightly into everything else. The decision to kill her off clearly wasn't taken lightly, and it wouldn't have made sense if they hadn't done it. Playing into this trope was clearly an accident rather than an intention. Whether that justifies it or not, I will leave up to your interpretation. When I game out alternative scenarios, they don't work nearly as well. Willow's got to have someone to lose as a result of Buffy's resurrection. Doesn't make sense if it's Xander, given, yeah, they're best friends, but they were never romantically suited at all. It was briefly tested in that arc in Season 3, but mostly just to cause drama in their other relationships. What if she was still with Oz by Season 6? Well, yes, he would have ended up dead at the same juncture, but given his nonchalant nature, it doesn't feel nearly as meaningful. It has to be someone as utterly perfect and lovable as Tara. The problem, obviously, is that Warren's stray bullet accidentally hitting Tara is a freak accident and disconnected from the resurrection of Buffy. Season 6 feels like it's desperately trying to fit these pieces of the story together when Giles tells Willow that she should have respected the forces of nature at the start of the series.
You were the one I trusted most to respect the forces of nature.
So, you know, I'm not really thinking about the balance and the forces of nature, and I'm kind of on Willow's side when she says this.
You may not violate the laws of natural passing.
How is this natural?
So yeah, Tara's death, while it's controversial and it doesn't get everything right, it does functionally work within Willow's arc, and it leads to some of the show's finest moments, as much as I hate to admit that. And the fact it comes just at the point where they reconcile after their breakup is extremely cruel. There's a cruelty to Season 6, which is understandable given the framework that necessitated Buffy's death and resurrection in the first place. That said, there's one character that I really think should have had a brighter ending. The reason I've largely avoided Anya up until this section is because her function is much more straightforward than the others. Spike is mostly comic relief for seasons 4 and 5, but he's also set up to be a key player in Buffy's emotional arc in season 6. For the longest time though, Anya is just comic relief. The joke being that she has a unique outsider perspective on human customs that everyone's just accepted as the way things are. If you've ever seen those Strange Planet comics floating about your social media feeds about the aliens who use hyper-specific words to over-describe ordinary human activities, you know this formula. The thing is though, that outsider status is deeply embedded into Anya's character. It isn't just a case of demon doesn't know better. She's 1,000 years old, she's been around humans all that time. As a vengeance demon, she used to help scorned women take revenge on men. She should have a better frame of reference for what humans are typically like than anyone. She just never bothered learning this stuff because human customs just weren't of any interest to her until she was forced to become one.
I mean, what happens next in our lives? When do we get a car?
A car?
And a boat. No, wait, I don't mean a boat. I mean a puppy. Or a child. I have a list somewhere.
We even flash back to her life over 1,000 years ago before she was made into a demon, and we see that even back then, she still treated herself as an outsider who's learning to adapt to being human rather than being a human herself. So far as normalising supernatural demon talk with youthful sarcastic dialogue goes, I think the joke that really sets course for her is this one at the start of her second episode, where she's pleading to get given her powers back.
For 1,000 years, I wielded the powers of the wish. I brought ruin to the heads of unfaithful men, and now I'm stuck at Sunnydale High. Mortal. And I'm flunking math.
It's a very sitcom premise to have a 1,000-year-old ex-demon adapt to and be taught the customs of human society by her exasperated boyfriend Xander. It makes me think of Mork and Mindy, where Robin Williams played an alien who came to Earth to study human society.
But if you just better keep your distance, or you're gonna hear me scream like you've never heard anybody scream.
I've never heard anyone scream. Is that your way of saying thanks?
Anya is similarly eccentric. She has a phobia of rabbits, discovers that she loves the feeling of having money, and inherits the magic shot from Giles. She's the fun part of the show when everything else seems to be falling apart, which is why by far my least favourite thing the show ever did was fumble her happy ending. The last few episodes of season 5 are this chaotic spiral of events where it looks like Gloria and her minions are about to win. Dawn gets kidnapped and it looks like she's going to die and the world's going to end. And in the midst of all of this, Xander proposes to Anya.
You're proposing to me because we're gonna die. And you know you're not gonna have to go through with it because the world's gonna end.
I'm proposing to you, Anya, because it's not.
It was pretty obvious they were heading here sooner rather than later. There was an episode earlier that season called The Replacement where Xander gets split in two, and one half is his immature, weaker self, and the other half is his more mature, stronger self. And he's surprised that he has this more mature side to him. He gets a promotion at work when he was sure he was about to get fired. He gets the nice apartment that Anya wanted. It shows that he's finally growing up. He just didn't realise it, because he still treats himself like the same stupid kid that he was when the show started.
How'd you do it? How'd you get the promotion? Well, I'm good at that stuff. I am? Yeah.
I felt largely warm and positive about the state of Xander and Anya's relationship by the start of season 6, so when they first start introducing the cracks, I just didn't really feel it. I wanted this to be the one area of season 6 that goes right. The season starts with Xander saying that they shouldn't tell everyone that they're getting married yet. This kinda makes sense to me. Buffy died, they resurrected her, she's depressed. Giles is going back to England, everything's looking bleak for everyone, and announcing a happy ending for those two might seem insensitive. So I didn't really see this as an omen that this is all going to end in tears. Okay, so the night that he tells everyone, at the party afterwards, Anya is overbearing and Xander spends the night giving worried looks.
I mean, mortal life being so short, we gotta cram in as much marital bliss as we can before we wither and die. I mean, there's just so much to consider, though. I mean, house and babies, you have to plan for babies, otherwise they'll just run roughshod over your entire existence.
You know, cold feet is normal. There are always going to be doubts. So they're stressed out about the wedding, hiding out in a bathroom while the relatives fight each other. Weddings are stressful, all of this is normal. The tragedy that Willow endures was always going to happen. Personally, I didn't think that Hell's Bells, where they get all the way to the wedding day and Xander leaves her at the altar, really feels right. The episode as a concept makes sense. On their wedding day, Xander gets visited by a version of himself from the future who shows him a vision of their depressing married life. He gets cold feet and runs out on her. Turns out that wasn't his future self, it was a demon who's out to sabotage Anya's attempt to get a new life for herself. But even after that reveal, Xander still wants out.
I had these thoughts and fears before this.
Well, yeah, in season 6 you had doubts. Before this, though, I'm not convinced that this ending was inevitable. The breakup of Xander and Anya just sort of seems to happen because this is season 6, and nothing good is allowed to happen in season 6. At all. Oh, we're going to do a big, fun, sparkly musical episode, but all the songs are going to be about the characters' miserable emotional turmoil. Oh, we're going to do a funny episode where all the characters lose their memories and Anya's going to keep summoning rabbits. But it's going to end with a miserable montage of Tara and Willow breaking up and Giles leaving the country. Buffy, season 6. Nothing good will ever happen here. Ever. The breakup of Xander and Anya also works to undermine Buffy's arc. This scene in Dead Things, where Buffy watches them dance from the balcony at the Bronze, where she has an incredibly questionable encounter with Spike, is meant to emphasise how Buffy has isolated herself in her dark little miserable bubble over the course of the season, by contrasting that bubble with the happiness that she could be having outside of it with her friends.
What would they think of you if they found out all the things you've done?
This scene doesn't work at all anymore if that happy image is built on a lie. The show tries to focus on Xander's appalling family as a psychological driver for his doubts. His dad's a drunk and fights with his mum all the time.
To my wife, what would I do without you, beautiful? Well, for starters, I probably wouldn't need to drink so much, would I?
He's never known the model of a functional marriage. Him catching sight of his parents fighting in his eye line when Anya's pleading with him to reconsider what he's about to do is this reminder to the viewer that he's always had this potential to run out on her. I don't know though, I just don't buy him doing something this huge based on his journey towards becoming a functional adult that he'd gone on in seasons 4 and 5. Fortunately, Anya is still a fun character after this happens. I just think she deserved a happy ending. But if she's not going to get it, her ending probably should have been much more personal. Her focal episode in season 7, Selfless, is phenomenal in all ways but one. It's not her final episode. Anya is now a vengeance demon again, and she's been misfiring at work because being human for so long, she's struggling to readjust to causing pain and misery.
There was just so much screaming, so much blood. I've forgotten how much damage a Crimslaw demon could do.
Oh, tell me about it.
She causes a massacre at a frat house, and now Buffy has to kill her. There's a lot of great emotional confrontation going on in this episode, and while I love it to bits, I think it probably should have either ended with Anya's death, either by Buffy or D'Hoffrun's hand, or with Anya leaving Sunnydale. Granted, I love the ending it has, where it looks like D'Hoffrun's about to kill her, but then he does a bait and switch and kills her friend Hallie.
Anya.
Haven't I taught you anything, Anya? Never go for the kill when you can go for the pain.
The episode itself is 5 stars, but I just feel it should have been her swan song. She started in season 3 as a demon with a severe hatred for men. She became human, fell in love with one, had her heart broken, and she went back to her violent and vengeful ways, but she found she just couldn't do it anymore. Now that she understood what it felt like to love a man like the one she helped women take revenge on, she'd grown too much as a person, and realised that what seemed like fair punishment for wrongdoing wasn't actually worth it. That's a perfect end to her story, and her eventual death in the finale feels more like an afterthought in an episode that already had a lot going for it. So I think she should have either died here or left Sunnydale. Maybe she moved to another state. Maybe she found someone more solid than Xander and settled down. This is one of my biggest problems with Season 7, a season that I do otherwise love, and since we finally got here, let's fight that battle now. I've made it clear in past videos that I have a surprising amount of affection for Buffy's awkward, sloppy and unloved final season. My love of it's probably rooted in the fact it's the only season that I watched live when it was first airing on BBC Two when I was a kid. Season 7 is unappreciated for some pretty big and obvious reasons, as it's the point where the show largely ditches the Monster of the Week format, and it opts to be this very long story of Buffy battling the first evil. It had already kind of done a long serial in Season 5 where Glory was a lot more prominent than past big bads, but you've still got this mix of episodes about various things. Riley's gone off the deep end, Anya and Willow have a domestic dispute and summon a troll. There's a funny robot episode, Buffy's mother dies. Season 7 is much more about one thing than the show had been before. It's kind of a proto-Stranger Things done in a format and an environment that this kind of story really wasn't suited to. I mean, if you pitch this as Buffy and her friends battle a non-corporeal manifestation of the concept of evil that takes the form of people who died, and it's an 8-episode season of a show that you binge watch on Netflix, that sounds utterly perfect. Problem is, this is the network TV era. And Season 7 isn't an 8-episode serial. It's a 22-episode season as usual. So obviously it runs into a lot of problems and has a lot of filler, rather than being this cohesive whole story with trimmed fat that's really neat and tidy. The season mostly just goes, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this. And then Faith arrives back in town, and there's this mad preacher who's kind of like a fundamentalist Christian version of Glory. And then she finds this super powerful axe, and that's now important for some reason. It feels like it's just making things up off the top of its head. Season 7 starts out kind of in the usual Monster of the Week vein. Sunnydale High School has been rebuilt at last, after having been blown up years ago. Buffy gets a job as a guidance counsellor, so she can keep an eye on Dawn, and deal with mystical goings-on over the Hellmouth again. There's throwback episodes in the vein of Season 1, like a football player with a magic jacket that makes girls fall in love with him. Willow returns to Sunnydale after the chaotic events of Season 6, but no one can see her. A girl at the school has premonitions of her death and Buffy has to try and stop it. These were the episodes that made little 12-year-old me fall in love with the show when I first found it, and I kind of wish it had spent a lot longer doing throwback Monster of the Week things with grown-up cast members who don't need adult supervision anymore, and who've accepted Dawn as part of the group and are teaching her how to fight vampires and demons.
I nearly got the heart.
My first time out, I missed the heart too.
No way.
Just the once.
But from the episode Conversations with Dead People onwards, it becomes this long, meandering story of potential slayers from all around the world journeying to Sunnydale to help fight the first evil. I do love Conversations with Dead People, and I seem to not be alone on that one. It's this quiet, reflective piece where Buffy's fighting a vampire, they stop a moment and realise they went to high school together, and they catch up on old times and really dig deep into Buffy's emotional problems.
You'd laugh if you heard some of the things I've done to them.
Buffy, I'm here to kill you, not to judge you.
And there's intersecting stories about Willow being visited by a ghost claiming to speak for Tara, and Dawn being haunted by the ghost of her mother. Some people may find it weird that these are some of the first Buffy episodes I ever watched, because they're so reliant on its context, but it's actually not as alienating as you might think, and you catch up pretty quickly. Spike and Buffy used to be a thing, now he's a vampire with a soul struggling to cope with the fact that he's killed people. The context comes up organically in dialogue pretty often, and it's fun, bouncy and accessible. When they referred back to past events, little 12-year-old me wanted to know more. They were hinting at this bigger world with a depth to it that left me wanting to truly explore it. I think not knowing the context as a kid was actually what made the whole thing more captivating to me, because if you hadn't caught this random Season 3 episode where they introduced the first evil before promptly forgetting about it for 4 years, you're wondering what the hell are these malevolent ghost visions of himself that Spike sees that pushes him to start killing people again.
One morning, just as the sun was rising, I heard a fair maid sing in the valley down below. How could you use a poor maid?
Spike!
It's dark, surreal, strange, and getting hooked on it was incredibly easy. I think I like it so much because Season 7 is probably the only pure horror season that the show did. The show was always composed of horror elements knitted together into this cheesy sitcom-esque tapestry of its influences. But having this aggressive, evil force that can take on the guise of dead characters and mimic them exactly, and doing all of this so it can psychologically break your main characters, it feels like they're actually trying to scare you this time. There's this atmosphere of hopelessness that just bleeds through this season. Its characters are victims of the first, holed up in Buffy's house just waiting to be pushed to breaking point, and when they start dying off, Buffy has to take them outside and bury their bodies.
I'm a Slayer. The one with the power. And the first has me using that power to dig our graves.
It's also clearly metatextual. The show is ending and it seems to be aware of that. There's this scent of death and decay everywhere in this season, with the stakes as high as they can be, and it probably won't end badly, but the show is ending, and maybe things won't work out this time. Granted, while I like a lot of the earlier Monster of the Week episodes this season, the filler episodes in the middle that avoid the main series plot, like the one where Willow gets hexed so she looks like Warren as penance for killing him, probably should have been ditched entirely. The extra space really could have been used for fleshing out the climate of Sunnydale, because that is seriously underdone. I really like this sequence towards the end of the season, showing the residents of Sunnydale and the high school are starting to be affected by living on top of the mouth of hell a lot more violently than usual. The sick bastard in me particularly enjoyed this.
Exam to the A, but he also makes it cover 3 more chapters, and I've got an English paper due tomorrow. I feel like I'm gonna explode.
Like what?
But up until that point, Sunnydale feels largely empty, even before people start actively fleeing the town around episode 19 and it becomes less an apocalypse story and more a post-apocalypse story. A preemptive post-apocalypse story.
These people have never seen an apocalypse before.
But these scenes really should have happened earlier in the season, or it should have been more prominent that the town's being affected by the omens of the apocalypse. When Buffy's killed vampires before, they turn to dust. So while it's weird that the town at large has lived in apparent blissful ignorance of the vampire activity, you kinda get how Buffy can stake a vampire and people can just walk around like nothing's happened, because there's no evidence of it. This season's regular villains, the Bringers, don't really work like that, because these eyeless monks running around the place killing teenage girls don't turn to dust when Buffy kills them. Does Buffy deal with all of their bodies? Surely the authorities have actually noticed that Buffy keeps leaving these corpses of eyeless monks lying about all over the place after a battle, right? Granted, it was implied in earlier seasons that the authorities do know about demonic activity and are covering it up.
You want the usual story? Gang-related, PCP?
What you have in mind, the truth?
Right. Gang-related, PCP.
But Season 7's rather narrow focus on our heroes, I feel limits its capacity as this epic showdown between good and evil. The way the first works is also kind of unclear. In this stretch of episodes in the middle where it's opened the Hellmouth and sent a super vampire after Buffy and her friends, it's got Spike holed up in this cave, and it spends episode after episode just tormenting him for some reason.
I know you like a good wriggle, and a giggle, and a squiggle.
It may sound like it's trying to get Spike to join the bad guys, but it's already proven it can control him. But it just sort of stops controlling him even before they figure out what the trigger of that control is. The first appears to Andrew in this episode to try and get him to kill the potential Slayers, and he asks it why it stopped controlling Spike, and it just says this.
So why not have Spike do it? He's the one with the trigger.
It's not time for him yet.
Yeah, but why though? The enemy being made out to be so super powerful and anomalous means it's kind of hard to buy a throwaway line like this.
If we go with what Anya's resources are telling us, then the first is in remission for a while. Which we think means advantage us.
Yeah, but what? Why? Oh, it's because it gives us the opportunity to pad the next couple of weeks with some random filler stuff, like Willow goes on a date with Kennedy. I know this is just me here, I know this is probably going to be a controversial opinion, but if the fat had been trimmed, it was about half as long as it was, its scope was wider, and some of these complaints were cleared up, I think we'd probably be looking at one of Buffy's best seasons. As is, yes, it is probably one of the weakest. If you didn't like this one's style, I do get it, and in fairness to its detractors, it contains what is probably the seed of the problem that attempted reboots have run into. The whole thing becomes about Buffy training the next generation of Slayers. She gets to stand there doing these big important speeches about power, tactics, instincts, and it ends with Willow casting a spell that activates every potential Slayer around the world, and Buffy does a big speech over a montage about every girl having the power now.
Every girl in the world who might be a Slayer will be a Slayer. Every girl who could have the power will have the power. Can stand up, will stand up.
And you know what this really reminded me of quite a lot? Broom Boy from Last Jedi. Wow, I am so glad that Buffy was made long before internet discourse started eating any and all coverage of popular franchises. While yes, Buffy got some shit for some of its decisions at the time, it would get endless shit if it was made these days. Did someone forget to hire a composer for that episode where her mum dies? Oh, it was so boring. Why is nothing happening? It is just our characters standing around and being sad. This isn't what I watched Buffy for. It was always hammered into us that the average life expectancy of a Slayer is incredibly short, but a sequel series to something like Buffy would always be expected to have returns of popular characters, because how else do you get people to watch it? But if Buffy is still alive, then that would mean the inevitable plot of a sequel series would be in watching Buffy, and maybe Willow as well, teaching young new characters the ropes about demon fighting. And the audience would definitely find the young new characters annoying by comparison to the older ones, because they have a bond with the old ones based on the original series and their nostalgia for it. And they would resent the young new ones because their favourite characters aren't the main focus. The young new ones would also have to disrespect the older ones because that's how drama works, and bad vibes would probably ensue from there. And that's exactly what happens in Season 7 when the potential Slayers start questioning Buffy's leadership and kick her out of the house.
You know what? I am sick of your deal with the Spike guy. This isn't about him, this is about you. You're being reckless. You are so obsessed with beating Caleb, you are willing to jump into any plan without thinking.
It's tough to watch, but it makes sense as a plot. Buffy has come of age now. She's an adult. The allegorical framework of Buffy, where you're watching a character coming of age via monsters, changes when the character has reached the destination they were headed for. The new challenges she faces are in cementing her role as the grown-up in the room. Problem is, that makes the new characters questioning her over her grown-up status feel instantly loathsome. Season 7 kind of already tested out what a potential Buffy revival would probably look like, and its mixed reception makes an actual sequel series decades later look like a naturally dodgy prospect. There are conflicting reports on why that recent attempted revival got cancelled, but that is a suggestion I haven't heard anybody making. And I would recommend rewatching Season 7 if you're still scratching your head about why they did that. Which leads me back around to what I opened this video with. While I loved Buffy to bits, I didn't really feel a need for more of it over the years because it told its story. If a studio or creative team wants to make more of it, they need to have a very, very good reason. While Buffy had a very specific purpose throughout its lifetime with regard to its target audience and broadcast slots, what I observed in rewatching it and taking extensive notes is that while it's very different to the shows that you watch nowadays, it was ultimately a transitional show for popular cult fantasy. Trends in storytelling that would become entrenched in the era of box sets that began just after it ended, followed by streamers doubling down on the binge-watching model, meant that while Buffy served its purpose during its initial run as a network drama, it was also lucky enough to be in a position where the new world of TV that it posthumously entered could be incredibly kind to it. Buffy managed to navigate the divide between the way people used to dip in and out of shows on a weekly basis during the network era, and the way people would sink entire weekends into speedrunning entire seasons of shows all in one go in the binge-watching era. While it is episodic in nature, one season is going to have one specific story that it's telling. And that one specific story is largely how sci-fi and fantasy shows exist these days. So Buffy is this nice combination of those two styles. At the same time though, one of the main reasons that Buffy is such a strange watch in the era of streaming TV is that TV shows are now being designed with the way that people engage with them a lot more casually than they used to. They can't be too demanding of your attention because quite a lot of people watch TV these days while glancing at their phone, either talking with other people on social media about something they're watching or playing Candy Crush, because everyone's attention spans have died. Don't tell me you don't know what I'm talking about here, that's probably how you've been watching this video. I bet that most people who've been watching this video haven't been paying attention to the visual content on the screen. You're probably listening to me while you're playing a casual game or while you're doing housework. So I might as well just keep playing these irrelevant clips of my cat on the screen for the rest of the video for all it matters. About 3 people are probably having an argument in the comments section about whether I should have used the HD remasters or the original standard def versions for clips in this video. Sorry to burst your bubble guys, nobody else has noticed. Even fewer of you will have noticed that some of them are the unremastered versions. No, I'm not shaming you for doing that, I get that this thing is massive. What makes Buffy so different to modern streaming phenomena is just how emphatically it commands your attention. Every second of the show is characters just tearing themselves open and pouring their souls right out into your face. If there's any word that is the antithesis of Buffy, it's mild. This show is designed to completely dominate the viewer during the experience. Even if an episode is uninspired or it's filler, it orders you to care about what's happening this week. It was actually quite hard to take endless notes on it during this watch through because I felt like the show wanted to physically grab me and shake me and ask me what the hell I thought I was doing looking away from the screen for even a second. And honestly, that's what makes Buffy such a refreshing watch now in the 2020s. Buffy screams at you about how important everything is the entire time it's happening, and while it's heavy-handed, on the nose and patronising at times, you can't deny just how easy it is to get invested. I'm finding streaming shows are becoming quite mild and drony, designed to just trundle along alongside your daily life. I missed having a show being this extreme with its emotions, and I'm clearly not the only one. It's probably the reason that anime is doing so well at the moment, because it's over the top by design. In fact, if any form of reboot for Buffy was ever likely to work, I'd say that anime is the format that would do it. Stranger Things started doing these big speeches about how much the characters care about each other in its later seasons, and people complained it was starting to feel like a soap opera, but a lot of those criticisms are probably coming from people who grew up watching Buffy, and probably have their hazy nostalgia spectacles on and haven't realised that it's basically attempting the exact same thing. Doesn't do it nearly as well, of course, but that's clearly what it's trying to emulate. Buffy somehow manages to do big over-the-top displays of emotion while also feeling real and sincere, and that's incredibly rare in the streaming era. The extreme way it presents its emotions is the thing that made Buffy so special and so powerful. It's definitely the reason it stuck with me all these years, and probably the reason it stuck with you too. But anyway, before I finish up, I'm going to do my top 10 favourite episodes, and I'm going to start with a surprising admission that Once More with Feeling is not on this list. Yes, I love it, it's one of few musicals that I can stand. I like how it spends its runtime metatextually lampshading the entire concept of the musical. My only problem with it is it doesn't quite work in the context of Season 6. Season 6 is bleak, nasty and depressing, and while sure the lyrics are all about how miserable things are right now, the songs themselves are absolute bangers, and it's so fun and bouncy, and it doesn't really feel like, holy shit, Willow and Tara are breaking up. It's, holy shit, Willow and Tara are breaking up. Wow, Amber Benson's voice is gorgeous, isn't it?
Willow, don't you see, there'll be nothing left of me.
So yeah, I love Once More with Feeling, and that is a minor nitpick, but it's why if I had to rank all of them 1 to 144, I'd place it just outside my top 10. So since I've done a controversial thing already, let's do another and start with the Season 7 episode that most people think is fairly unremarkable. Number 10, Same Time, Same Place. The only reason this is here is it was my first episode of Buffy. A weird starting point, given it's built entirely on the context of the Season 6 finale that I hadn't seen at the time. But the way it was done was unique and interesting. It's not just an episode where Willow has come home after a long time away and is unsure that her friends will accept her back because of something that she did and has therefore rendered herself invisible by magic. Entire scenes play out one after another where Willow's in one, then Buffy, Xander and Dawn are in another. It's like watching parallel universes. The simultaneous conversations with two separate groups with Spike, driven mad by his regained soul, are particularly clever.
The victim was skinned. What could do that?
You did it once. I heard about it.
You must have seen the body.
You did it once. I heard about it.
Spike, we need to know who did this.
The context makes it better, yes, but without it, it's one of the more visually creative episodes. I love the way this thing's shot, the way it transitions between Xander and Buffy in the same scene as Willow, the camera just sort of flinging you between different versions of the same scene. Number 9. I was originally going to put Graduation Day Parts 1 and 2 here, but upon thinking about it, I've gone for what Sarah Michelle Gellar cites as her favourite episode, The Prom. I didn't quite get this one as a kid, probably because I'm not American and we don't really do these big formal high school dances here. My school had a prom, but it seemed stupid and hokey to me and I didn't get why it was so meaningful to people. But watching The Prom now, years later, it was a really effective way of seeing Buffy's emotional reaction to Angel leaving her just before this magical night, and her having to put her desire for one beautiful moment to one side to protect her classmates from hellhounds that have been sent to attack them. Buffy feels underappreciated, but then her classmates surprise her by recognizing the protection she gives them. It's quite a simple heartstring tug, but a really powerful one.
We're
Proud to say that the class of '99 has the lowest mortality rate of any graduating class in Sunnydale history.
Number 8. I was either going to put Selfless here because it's a perfect summation of everything the show was trying to do with Anya, but I ended up picking Family because it's a similarly perfect summation of everything the show was trying to do with Tara. Introducing your family to a partner is never easy because you always have context and baggage that you don't want your partner to see, especially early on because you're afraid it might put them off you. And Tara's baggage involves people who've literally gaslit her into believing that she's a demon. She does a self-interested thing to try and hide that, but it's constructed in such a way where you don't blame her for it. And it's easily Amber Benson's best performance. It may be trying a little too hard with the "we're her family now" moment, but it's played so well that I can't help but feel exactly what it tells me to feel. Buffy was always violently assertive over your feelings, and I always feel so good after watching the ending to this one. Number 7. The Wish. I think The Wish's best trick is its violent left turn around the middle. You'd think an alternate reality story where Cordelia's mad about the gang and wishes that Buffy never came to Sunnydale would see her experiencing how horrible that reality would be and going, "Oh no, why didn't I appreciate Buffy when she was here?" and learning a lesson and working to fix her mistake. No, instead that repentance happens around the middle and then she just gets killed off anyway, and the episode just gets crueler and crueler from there. Its attitude is basically just, fuck it, let's go all out and see how horrible this interpretation of this world is. Doesn't matter how many people die in horrible ways, we're undoing it anyway, so let's do whatever we want. Number 6. Conversations with dead people. Yes, I know that some people are going to be scratching their heads at me putting 2 Season 7 episodes in my top 10. Be grateful, I was considering making them all Season 7 episodes out of spite. It's a bit strange that Willow gets visited by the ghost of Cassie, a character who she didn't even meet from a random story a few weeks prior, but her delivering these cryptic messages from Tara I'd say is actually more chilling than if this had been Tara herself. The point where Willow realises what the First is doing to her hits incredibly hard.
Be with her. Everybody will be safe and you'll be together again. It's not that bad. Really. It's just like going to sleep.
Number 5. Passion. Passion is one of those early episodes of Buffy that could easily have been a feature film. One of the finest pure old school horror sequences in Buffy is where Angel shows up at the school to kill Miss Calendar late at night. The lighting techs really knew what they were doing here. It's also the episode that cements Giles as one of the best characters in Buffy. His story up until this point of the toing and froing of his relationship with Jenny, ending with this beautifully tragic image of her body left in his bed, followed by his blind fury, is just breathtaking. And it's easily Anthony Head's best performance. Number 4. Hush. What I love so much about Hush is that, like Once More with Feeling's treatment of the musical genre, it's basically the characters reacting with horror at the idea of being in a silent comedy. You probably don't think of Hush as part comedy because of the nightmarish image of these creepy things breaking into this guy's room late at night and cutting his heart out, which is going to be seared into my brain till the day I die. But it actually is a comedy for most of it. There's things like this scene where Xander walks in, sees Spike with his monster face on, and it looks like he's bitten Anya. But oops, it was all a misunderstanding. Hush strikes the right balance between horror and comedy and makes for one of the funnest entries in Buffy's catalogue. The complete antithesis to number 3, The Body. As said, I didn't like The Body at all when I first saw it. Hell, it's hard to say I like it now. But to call it anything other than one of the most astonishing achievements in the field of television would be dishonest. It is by any measure of quality easily the best episode of Buffy. But it's my number 3 because it's my list and not yours. Number 2, Normal Again. Buffy kickstarted my fascination with shows, movies and books that take major narrative risks. This isn't Buffy's first, of course, probably not even its biggest. Dawn was easily the biggest, riskiest decision it made. But as an isolated experiment that proposes that Buffy is, in reality, a delusional young woman in a mental institution and the entire show wasn't real, and it leaves it open-ended where that is genuinely possible. Really, I just have to admire the guts required to do something like this. The show addresses how ludicrous its premise is and how stupid some of its developments are, and it goes, wait, this could actually be what's going on.
You think this isn't real just because of all the vampires and demons and ex-vengeance demons and the sister that used to be a big ball of universe-destroying energy?
Granted, your level of appreciation of this will depend on how much you like shows playing with you. Personally, I think this really works. And number 1. Anyone who watches my channel regularly or knows me in real life will see this coming. Yeah, of course it's Restless. Restless looks and feels like pure chaos, as a Dream episode should, but it's a very controlled and calculated form of chaos. Buffy was always very direct and upfront about its morals and themes all the time, and sure, Restless is a lot more direct than most Dream-based stories.
Buffy, you have a sacred birthright to protect mankind. Don't stick out your elbow.
Oh, you stick me.
I haven't got any treats.
But you can't deny the power of its dense and absurd, but oddly penetrable and captivating images that let you explore the characters' minds. I was utterly blown away when I first saw it as a kid, and it's probably what inspired a lifetime of seeking out trippy media. Upon returning to it, it does end up feeling like a Kid's Bop cover of a David Lynch project, but it's such a fun ride of deadpan humour and characters that you recognise as friendly stopping and suddenly confronting each other. It's the episode I've watched the most over the years, and I'll probably continue returning to it in the years to come. Thanks for watching, everybody. The next video will be shorter, I promise. In case you're unaware, I have a Patreon. The link to it is that. There's a couple of different things on there. You can get early access to big long things I'm working on, extra stuff. You can also get me to read your name out, which is what I'm going to do now. Huge thanks to these very generous people. Aidan Jenks, Alistair McPherson, Becca W, Charlotte Discordia, Chris P, Quedgen, Dave Sanders, Father Brench, Gavin Smith, Harry Minogue, Hideo Kojima is my dad, Howling Moon, James Morgan Belcher, Mark Osborne, MB_8, Oxbow is Amsty, Robert Conley, Sabrina Wade, The Hickster, and Tony Thompson. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.